Good evening and welcome to Thorold City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First on our agenda, councilors, are there any conflicts of interest? I'll ask you to please be quiet as we conduct our business. Are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none. First off, I'm just going to ask how many people are here for the licensing bylaw report. That is not coming out till next 2 weeks from now, on the 17th of October. So for whatever other reason you want to stay, you could stay, there's no problem, but that licensing report will be out 2 weeks from now. Anyways, I'm moving into the public meeting portion of our agenda, and this public meeting is being held pursuant to the provision of Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended. The above noted application has been submitted to permit a 3-story residential apartment with 8 two-bedroom units. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning from residential 3rd density R3 to residential 4th density R4A, with special provisions to facilitate the development. An attendance sign-in sheet is located at the back if you wish to receive a copy of the forthcoming city staff recommendation report and a copy of the city council decision. Please add your contact information to the sign-in sheet. At the same table, copies of this evening's city technical report are available for review, which include all comments received to date. I'll call on Dan Romanko, Better Neighborhoods, Inc., agent for the applicant, to present the proposed application. Mr. Romanko, welcome.
Thank you. I actually had a PowerPoint presentation prepared, and it's not queued up. Good.
Okay, we'll take a minute, and she'll set that up for you.
Okay, I think we got it up now. Thanks very much for your patience.
Can you speak right into the microphone,
Sorry.
please?
Thanks very much for your patience. We're good to go now. So we're looking for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the construction of a 3-story apartment on the property. And so this is 6 Ann Street. The location is obviously on Ann Street, just behind or just north of the Pine Street Plaza, and not far from the intersection of Pine Street in downtown Thorold. This is the current site. It's,
Can you turn your mic on? I don't think
it
the
is on,
microphone.
I'm sorry.
It is on? The red light's on?
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can't hear you up here,
No?
all of them. You're going to have to speak up.
Okay. So this is the current property. It is, as you can see, there was a single detached home here, which has since been removed, and to make way for the development. The property consisted of a land assembly, which was a boundary adjustment between 2 and 6 to create this parcel. So in summary, the proposed development is a 3-story apartment with 8 units. 10 parking spaces are located in the rear yard to permit a better walkable streetscape. The architecture, which you'll see in a moment, is quite compatible with the neighborhood. It adds residential units to the downtown area, which means there's an affordable housing option and an increase in growth to local businesses, and naturally an increase in municipal assessment. This is the proposed site plan. So you can see the parking located in the rear, the house addressing the street with a front door that also addresses the street. And this is the proposed elevation. So it's 3 stories, flat roof, which makes it compatible with the existing neighborhood, quite an attractive architecture. The site is zoned or designated transitional and urban living area in the official plan, which permits the permitted use. However, apartments are not a permitted use in the R3 zone, so we're looking to change that to R4 to permit that. So in summary, the proposal is ideally located downtown. It has residential units to support the economic growth. The building's designed to be compatible with the existing neighborhood. There are no parking or servicing issues associated with the development. The intensification meets the existing land use policy objectives, and it's desirable and appropriate for the area. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for our presenter? Sorry, can't take any questions. You'll be able to ask questions in a short period of time, but now this is just for council's questions right now. Is there any questions of council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Romanko.
Thank you.
Presentation. I'm going to call on Denise Landry, our senior planner, and to present the technical report. You can present it right from there, Denise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff will assess the application based on provincial, regional, and local policies, and will consider all future comments received through a future recommendation report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Landry. Okay, now's the time for public input. If a person or public body chooses to not provide oral comments at the public meeting or written comments before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, this will result in loss of any rights to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Thorold to the Ontario Municipal Board. Now, at this time, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward to the podium. Please state your name and address. Sir, you wanted to come up? Yeah, where's the podium here? Yeah. Speak right into the mic too, please, also, if you don't mind.
I'm just curious if 10 spaces is enough parking for 8 handicap.
I'll ask Mr. Romanko to answer that question, please.
There are no accessible units proposed.
Okay.
Parking spaces.
That'll be a question for our staff.
That's the question I have.
Okay.
This will be something that'll be looked at through the recommendation report and will be addressed at that time.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against the proposal? Okay, I'll move to my closing remarks. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13. Pursuant to Section 34, the City's General Committee will consider staff's recommendation report, which will be subsequently considered by City Council at a future date. Anyone wishing to receive a copy of City Council's decision as a result of this application is asked to submit their request in writing to the City Clerk. As such, this public meeting portion of this application is now closed. And we'll return back to our agenda. And we move into minutes. Minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 19th. Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Longo, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 19th, 2017 be received and adopted.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any items for discussion in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Minutes of the special council meeting held on September 19, 2017. Councilor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Ugolini, that the minutes of a special council meeting held on September the 19th, 2017 be received and adopted.
Thank you, Councilor. Any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I'll move into my mayor's report. It's quite extensive. Welcome, everyone. It's hard to believe that it is already October. This is a very busy time for council and staff. Budget deliberations will begin shortly, and staff is working diligently to present the necessary information for debate and approval at council. I wish to thank staff for their hard work in putting this cumbersome document together, and council looks forward to working with you on creating a budget for 2018. I encourage all taxpayers in Thorold to be part of the budget process through any public meetings that are announced or by sending written comments to the mayor and council. We always like to hear from our citizens, of course. On September 17th, the Terry Fox Run took place in Thorold. It is an important event across Canada that raises money for cancer research in the memory of a very brave young man. For 29 years, Councillor Mike Sharon has organized this event in Thorold and has raised over $360,000. On behalf of council and the community, I would like to thank Councillor Sharon for his long-standing dedication to making this event happen in our city. The grand reopening of the Frank Doherty Arena was celebrated with a ribbon cutting on Saturday, September 23rd. A number of residents enjoyed the free skate and refreshment. I was pleased to cut the ribbon with Dr. Don McMillan, who originally the arena was built by him and his council in 1974. He provided us a history of the building for all of those in attendance. Also in attendance at that meeting were Regional Councillor Henry D'Angela and City Councillor Terry Ugolini, along with our CAO, Manoj Delwadia. We have an important event occurring in Thorold this Saturday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the DQ House Heritage Park on DQ Road. The First Nations Peace Monument will be officially unveiled at 1 p.m. with food and entertainment followed until 4 p.m. Admission is free. Parking will not be available at the park. Free parking and continuous shuttle buses to the site from the Niagara Region parking lot will run from 11 to 5:30. On behalf of council and the community, I would like to thank Carolyn McCormick and the Friends of Lower Seacourt for their vision and determination in making this project a reality. This is an important chapter in the reconciliation, our relationship with our First Nations people. The City of Thorold is honored to host the site for this monument. The Thorold Public Library is holding their Patron Appreciation Open House on October 14th from 2 to 4 p.m. This is their kickoff to the Ontario Public Libraries Week. The itinerary for the week's events can be picked up at the library or found on their website. October also means the return of a much-beloved event in Thorold, the Canal Bank Shuffle. We'll fill our downtown streets with the exceptional talents of blues musicians from Canada and the United States from October 12th to October 15th. Tickets are only $25 for a full weekend pass to any venue in the festival. On behalf of council and the community, I wish to thank festival organizers and acknowledge that we are very fortunate to have such a passionate, dedicated group of people in our community. And that concludes my report. We'll move into the delegation portion of our agenda. Our first delegate is Sue Moran, tourist agent, Thorold Tourism Advisory Committee. Welcome, Sue.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. think you can better hear me now. There we go. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you once again for having me present on our tourism activities for 2017. Venture Niagara is proud to have the contract to deliver tourism services to the city of Thorold, and that sees me here once again giving you a little bit of an update. So, and I'm glad we have such a big crowd to find out what's going on in tourism in Thorold. So now we have a lot more people going to the Canal Bank Shuffle, October 13th, 14th, 15th, I believe it is. So first of all, of course, there are two things that we do. We operate the Lock 7 Information Center and also provide marketing information on behalf of the city. And you'll see here where the operation of Lock 7, our season opened May 15th. And we have a fantastic partnership with the museum, and it results in actually guests staying longer in Lock 7 Information Center, and we get donations to the museum with the information that we're providing to the folks that are coming in. We also provide brochures, menus, and on local restaurants, of course, on Front Street and everywhere in Thorold. And we have TVs showing videos about Thorold and the Welland Canal. It's a great location to hand out local event sponsors or posters. We handed out a lot of the Canada 150 celebration pins. We actually sold some for $1. And the information on all the music that's happening in Thorold. The Thorold Legion Branch 17 has weekly bands, the Canal Bank Shuffle, we have craft shows, etc. The Port Robinson Ferry promotion, we were greatly involved in that. And also we greet some bus groups at the Lock 7 Information Center. I just want to give you a little bit of information on the tracking from May 15th to September 25th. We had 7,775 visitors or calls. You'll see the number of walk-ins here. The origin, of course, is mostly from Ontario, but followed by USA and other areas in Ontario, Europe, of course, and Quebec. Places of interest, the good news story here is that Thorold is why they are there. And so we do provide a lot of information about Thorold, and then St. Catharines and those other municipalities along the canal. Mode of transportation, they're coming in by car, but we get a ton of cyclists there. As you know, being on the Greater Niagara Circle route, it's a fantastic destination and kind of 1/3 on the way to Port Colborne, so they do stop. And the most requested information is on the Welland Canal, particularly ship times. The minute a ship is coming in, we get people into the information center. So we're doing a lot of social media activity on the ship times, and it seems that that is working and getting them in there. Of course, we're trying to send them into downtown, of course, as well. I just wanted to show you a little bit of tracking on the activities from 2016 to 2017. We are closed now, actually, because there will be some construction next week. You'll see that we were up in visitations and in walk-ins in particular, but the origin of this guest is from Ontario. Once again, USA numbers, these numbers are very similar from one year to the next. And of course, places of interest is Thorold, and the Welland Canal is still our prized possession for Thorold. The brochures that are most requested are, again, the Welland Canal, and I have some numbers here. We do track how many brochures we hand out. We have a complete inventory of what we have in-house and what we hand out so that we are aware, and a great partnership with the Seaway, with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway System brochure. We have, I think you have in hand a copy of our Thorold map, which is brand new this year, quite extensive, and I'll go over that a little bit. The regional cycling map, very important to the area and to the region, and of course to Thorold being on the Greater Niagara Circle route, and all the other maps, of course. We do some online marketing. We have up-to-date information on thoroldtourism.com and real-time social media feeds. So whatever we tweet out comes up on our landing page immediately. So people are getting real-time information. And our SEO here, we do see some of the numbers, 30,000 page views and 23,000 unique visitors. It's quite impressive to see how things increase when you talk about that Welland Canal. It's just unbelievable. You'll see some of the followers that are on Twitter, on Facebook. Instagram is brand new to us, so those numbers are quite low. We just got into Instagram. Has everything to do with a lot of pictures, and staff don't have a lot of time to take a lot of pictures, but we ask our guests to take pictures of themselves and to follow Thorold Tourism. The partnership with the Thorold and Beaver Dam Historical Society and Museum is a wonderful addition, and I said that last year, but we've had another full year under our belt together. We're pretty excited. People walk in awe and actually spend 40 minutes, 45 minutes at the Lock 7 Information Center, which wasn't really happening before. So this is excellent. And after we finish giving some information, they take out money of $5, $10, sometimes $20, and put it in the donation box for the museum. So I really think it's a win-win situation for everyone. And of course, our partnership with the LAC Act folks, who I see a few of them here with me tonight. We're meeting on October 11th to identify some heritage assets for possible tours. And what's exciting there is that we're looking at actually doing some Segway tours if we can, and if our bylaws permit, for the city of Thorold. And Monsieur Guillaume Donat is here with us this evening, the owner of Niagara Segway. And we're looking at doing downtown tours. So we're hoping to work with senior staff to see how we can get these bylaws clear to us and make sure that we can do these Segway tours. But hopefully we can do historical Segway tours for next year. So we're working again with the Thorold Tourism Advisory Committee. I'm an active member of the BIA Marketing Committee. A lot of things going on there, the Combined Chairs Alliance, and you see the rest of the list. We partner very closely with the St. Catharines, Welland, Port Colborne, and 20 Valley folks and the RTO in Niagara. Canal Bank Shuffle, as you said, Mr. Mayor, is a signature event for Thorold. It is 3 days for $25 and a ton of shows. It's just impossible to have that much fun for $25. And our restaurants are waiting to serve all the guests before, during, and after the concerts. So you'll see here some details on the talent that we're getting here this year. 3 International Blues Challenge winners, 1 Grammy winner, 2 Grammy nominees, 2 Juno winners, multiple Maple Blues winners. It's well worth the $25. The pièce de résistance for our work this year, as you know, we've had a massive committee to help get funding for the Port Robinson Ferry. So we were very busy coordinating the campaign to save the Port Robinson Ferry with city staff, of course, and you, Mr. Chair, as Mr. Mayor, as the chair. So we've, you see here, I think in your hands, you will see some of the marketing information, the pins that we hand out on the Port Robinson Ferry. We've coordinated some marketing efforts. That was kind of my role there. And some of the signage, of course, posted around the ferry on the east side and west side. We had storyboards that are at the region, and these handed out at other information centers, explaining that Bridget gets you across the canal so that we can cut the Greater Niagara Circle route in half and call that the Bridget route. We are going to Regional Council October 17th at 9 o'clock in the morning at Public Works meeting to do a presentation to be able to secure funding for the next 10 years. So this has been an extremely active committee, and I look forward to talking about it when you have some questions maybe. But the Thorold map has been revamped, and it's a real winner. We worked with Keith Overend this year. He's called the map guy. There's no one better in town. We sold 12 ads, and it includes a plethora of information that we never had in any other map before in Thorold. So we have a map of the region, urban Thorold, the downtown, etc., Port Robinson, Thorold South, and all key facilities. We've done photo shoots, Port Robinson Splash Pad, Battle of Beaver Dams Park, Canada Day festivities, Blues in the Battlefield, the Thorold Pool. These are all assets that you have hired us to get for you so that you can use and your staff can use in your marketing and on your website. 2018, there'll be some more photos taken. There'll be some work with Thorold's heritage groups, definitely. We want to revisit that Thorold Discovery Walk and those different walks that they've had. I'd really love to develop more product there for the city of Thorold. We're going to work with the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee to develop marketing packages with some of the photos that we took this year. We need to replace some of the signage around the Lock 7 Information Center and signage towards the Greater Niagara Circle route. And I'd love to be able to paint and decorate that polar bear that's at the Information Center because he needs a little bit of a zhuzh. We need to zhuzh him up. And also sport tourism. So our committee is talking very much about sports tourism. How do we find out what events are going on in town? How do we get our map in the hands of the people who are here visiting, etc.? So one thing I want to bring to your attention, and you have a copy as well, I believe, in your hands, are these two photos. Photo on the left is, I don't know the date of that. I got that at the museum. But the photo on the right is the actual view we have right now of the Lock 7. And this is a viewing center. And if we get more growth on these trees, we won't be viewing anything but a beautiful forest. So I would like to put this bug in your ear that next year we work with Trillium Railway, that's just at the bottom there, and we cut down some of this because people are asking, where can we see it? And on the third ask, we finally say, you may have to go down to Lock 3. And I don't want to do that. I want them to go for lunch in Thorold. So I'm putting that bug in your ear. Maybe senior staff can have a discussion on this. What I'd like to finish with is some of the photos that we've taken this year, and I do have a video that I need to show you about the Port Robinson Ferry. And this video is going to be going as part of my presentation to Public Works on October 17th. We shot it on Thursday, and it's available, and I really want you to see it, Mr. Mayor. So these are some of the photos that we took on Canada Day to show the space, but also the fun in the event, and some of the Blues in the Battlefield event, of course, part of the Canal Bank Shuffle. This is a drone shot of the Port Robinson Ferry. Her name is Bridget. For those who don't know Bridget, she bridges the east and west side of Port Robinson. The office and ramp for council who may not have gone down to the Port Robinson Ferry this summer, $100,000 or more was spent on this ramp on the east and west side. It's magnificent. I showed somebody the video this morning. They said, is that Peterborough? So it looks fantastic. And we did do a shot with some of our accessible cyclists so that now we know that the boat is accessible, and that was an investment that the city and the Seaway did, and we're very, very proud to be able to show off the fact that this is accessible. Another shot, this is the splash pad at Port Robinson Park. With a ship, we waited about 2 hours to get a ship coming down the canal at the same time. Another splash pad shot. This was something from the Canada 150 weekend. And of course, the Battle of Beaver Dam Park gates. It looks like the pearly gates, actually. And some of the Beaver Dam parks as well. I have a lot more photos from this year, but if I can show that video, Joanne, I would love it. But these are all assets. These photos are for you to have and to use, and I hand them over to Joanne after, and the BIA gets to use them as well. So if you'll indulge me, the video is 1 minute, 4 seconds, and it's well worth it. And hopefully I'm not over my time. Oh.
Can't hear it.
Here's your drone shot, Mr. Mayor, you wanted.
Thank you.
That sign says rattle the chain for service because the staff can't hear people calling out when it's windy. So if they rattle that chain, they come and get them with the boat. So it's pretty cute. And that's the infrastructure changes that are done on the east side. So I just wanted you to see what's going to Regional Council, besides all the marketing and all the information that we have for them on October 17th to ask for that 10-year funding. So that concludes my presentation this evening, and I hope that you found it not too fast, but I only get 15 minutes, but there was a lot of information.
Thanks very much, Sue. That was a great presentation. Are there any questions? Councillor Neal?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, Sue. I noticed there's 18 tour buses that came this year, which I'm sure is up quite a bit from the previous year. If you were to have tour buses come downtown Thorold, there's no dedicated spot at the present moment for that. Do you feel that it would be advantageous to have a spot downtown for the tour buses to stop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Neal, I am aware, I believe, that you have a bus, some construction happening at the bus stop on Towpath Road. So that is a possible option for your motor coach, but they can load and unload. You have some spots in front of the BOM. I believe that is a bus area where they can unload, then the bus would leave and then turn around and come back in an hour. So I think we have that solved. If I'm wrong, then you let me know. But I think we're all right. I did walk the street last year with a tour operator, and we felt that that was appropriate.
Councillor Handley?
Thank you, Councillor Neal. It's a great initiative you're doing. It's great to see what you're doing, but I just wish to ask that you mentioned about painting the polar bear and that you go through staff because that's been donated by the Ford family. That's part of Inuit art, and I don't believe painting or doing anything Inuit art isn't acceptable in regards to their culture. So you best not or consult staff in regards to that. That's a part of Inuit art.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I mentioned it. I would have gone through senior staff anyway, but thank you.
Are there any other questions? When are we closing the tour center?
It is closed right now,
This closed now? Okay.
unfortunately, because of construction.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
That's it.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Sue.
Have a good evening.
Our next delegate is Craig Finley, Chair of the Thorold Heritage LACAC, and he's going to talk to us about a book launched by city historian Sarah King Head.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sarah is going to be doing just a very brief PowerPoint, so we'll get that set up while I'm speaking. Mayor and council members, it's my pleasure this evening to bring you some very good news concerning heritage in Thorold and to introduce Sarah King Head, who will officially launch a new edition to the written history of our city. Recently, we were informed that the old post office building on Front Street, owned by Shannon and Michael Pizzaro, has been awarded the Paul Oberman Award for adapted reuse of a heritage structure by the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. This is a very prestigious award. These are the Academy Awards of Heritage in Ontario. This is a very prestigious award. It again highlights the value of maintaining and reusing our built heritage. I know that I join with you in congratulating the Pizzaros, city staff, Sarah King Head, and Pam Mims for their work on this nomination. Last week, we were also informed that the report entitled The Beaver Dams Cultural Heritage Landscape, commissioned by Heritage Thorold and conducted and written by Sarah King Head, has won the Margaret and Nicholas Hill Cultural Landscape Award for Ontario. This will also be presented at the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Congratulations to Sarah. Both awards will be presented on November 4th at Osgood Hall in Toronto. I can't underline enough, if you're in the world of heritage, this is big stuff. So congratulations to them. As mentioned, Heritage Thorold, in its concern for the preservation of the area known as Beaver Dams, commissioned Sarah King Head to prepare a report on the cultural heritage of that area. On its completion, Sarah suggested to the committee that this report could be a strong foundation for a book on beaver dams and serve as a fitting tribute to Thorold's history in this, our sesquicentennial year. Sarah is Thorold's historian and Heritage Thorold's principal researcher. She has a BA in History from the University of Saskatchewan, an MA in History and Art History, and a Master's of Philosophy in History and Art History, both from the University of Toronto. We are very pleased that Sarah chose this area to move to with her husband, who is a professor at Brock University. And here Sarah has continued her excellent research activities. I'll ask Sarah to come forward for the official launch of her book, Where the Beavers Build Their Dams.
Yeah, I have to press to forward it, but, thank you very much, Craig, and thank you, Mayor,
Welcome,
Council,
Sarah.
and all your visitors. Sorry, okay, is that better? All right. I'm gonna try to read through this rather quickly. I'm just doing an overview of the history that's contained in the book, and just to give you a snapshot of what aspects of Beaver Dam's history I've covered. What's most interesting about its history is the profound transformations the surrounding landscape has experienced over the past few hundred years. What we know is largely shaped by descriptions and testimonies of those who settled around the crossroads at Beaver Dams and Deque Marlat's roads after the late 18th century. But what is harder to detect is what's underneath that layer, and this includes pre-contact or Indigenous land use activities. Okay. For most of our earliest information, we are limited to the writings and insights of the first missionaries in the area. What they found after the late 17th century was illustrated in various maps, like the one that's shown here, which is known as the Beaver Map of 1715. And of interest to my study was the work of the industrious beavers around Niagara Falls, atop the escarpment, with its many fast-flowing streams and cataracts. Benson Lossing's drawing of a century later was meant to illustrate the area where the Battle of Beaver Dams was fought in 1813. This was a landscape that had changed little over the course of millennia. The limited land use activities associated with the region's Indigenous peoples, or the neutral nation, was essentially organic and responded to the natural geomorphology of the landscape. Although we know very little, we do know that there was a large neutral village located in the area that is now Barbican Heights, north of St. David's Road, in the early 17th century. Although tragically wiped out in about 1650, the Indigenous legacy remained in many ways, and importantly, for the story of Beaver Dams, through the invaluable trail network. The arterial network throughout the region was mapped by Simcoe as early as the 1780s, as we see with this reproduction of one of his maps by Francis Hall in 1815. Known as theatre of war maps, their purpose was to delineate the routes and basic amenities available to the British Army in the event of an American attack. The intersection of two of these trails was key to the development of the first community of Beaver Dams, as we see in this map, and it's in the little round, the circled area, the red circled area. The two intersecting trails were the Beaver Dams Trail that followed the Beaver Dams Creek to the south and extended from Niagara Falls, and another that linked St. David's and Queenston with localities further inland. It was here at the crossroads of these two important trails that the first permanent settlement in Thorold Township was established. The vibrant community around 1800 had many businesses and legacies, businesses and industries, including a blacksmith's, a general store, a post office, a tavern, a sawmill, a saddlery, harness shop, and other things as well. By the 1820s, in fact, the prominence of the Beaver Dams area was well acknowledged. Not only was it early proposed that the Welland Canal be routed through the community to Deque Falls, but there was talk of relocating the county jail here too. And these two photos here at the top show the Stone Inn and the post office, two of the very few built heritage relics associated with the first village that were which actually survived to the early 20th century. Importantly, they predated plans by none other than George Kiefer to subdivide the land in the northwest quadrant of the intersection as village lots from the mid-1820s onward. Even though the community never received formal village status, the lots around the crossroads were all sold, and we know that at least one house was built. Most of us who know the area at all will, of course, be familiar with Beaver Dams Church, which was built in 1832. And many also know that this whole area, the Beaver Dams area, is where Ryerson, the father of public education in Ontario, established one of the first free schools, which means non-fee paying, in British North America in 1847. Early Welland Canal maps also provide an insight into the area's built heritage. And this map shows the area just along the canal, if you can, just on the far left there. The road leading up is what's today Marlat's Road, and where it intersected with the canal. But if you carried along further along, you would actually run into the location of the two schoolhouses that Ryerson had helped make free. And these, today, you can still find the foundation, actually, if you walk along into the bush along what would have been Marlat's Road. As commercial trade along the Welland Canal was being diverted to the larger centres like Thorold, St. Catharines, and Welland, villages like the Beaver Dams couldn't compete. Reversion to farmland was inevitable in the area after the mid-19th century, and it was a scenario fairly characteristic for many of the smaller canal communities, like Port Robinson. This map of 1876 shows the main landowners and the lay of the land, with Beaver Dams Creek continuing to wend its way beneath the former Indigenous trail that would become today's Marlat's DQ Road. Until the early 20th century, the area's main industry was agriculture, and indeed it was here that the highly praised Swayze apple was grown. I've barely done it justice, but what I've hoped to have shown here is how rich in history and cultural heritage value the first community at the Beaver Dams was in the 19th century. Indeed, Thorold's earliest history was associated with Beaver Dams, as this photo of old-timers from the Jubilee history of Thorold suggests. And all these people here either lived in Beaver Dams or farmed in the area around. This was the book that was published by Thompson, of course, at the end of the 19th century. Moving on to the 20th century, Beaver Dams was a quiet community located around the crossroads west of the Welland Canals. This photo here is very evocative. It shows a dirt track that came off of Marlat's Bridge and is looking west along what would have been the Indigenous Beaver Dams Trail, and today is Marlat's Road. It shows many buildings that are still extant, including the schoolhouse on the left there, with the bell tower, and what would later become known as the Wilson Homestead, which is just on the right as you're on the center, just right of the trail. Big changes were on the horizon, principally associated with the recognition of the enormous potential of generating hydroelectric power from the area's water resources. Key was the flooding of Beaver Dams Creek to become Lake Gibson in 1904. The postcard shown here articulated concerns of one person that Beaver Dams Church would, quote, soon be one of the many small islands formed by the flooding of all the surrounding valleys, end quote. No one basically really knew what the result would be, and for this reason, the power company negotiated with various landowners to buy land and/or buildings that would become inundated. After the waters receded and the lay of the land became clear, the entrepreneurial farmer, Frank Wilson, who himself had lost his farmstead, bought the land enclosed by Lake Gibson and created a second village subdivision known as Beaver Dam Centre. The current village of Beaver Dams is situated here. The region's early 20th century industrial hub was also located nearby, with factories like Ontario Paper, Exelon, and Beaverboard all being established around the same time. In addition to industrial enterprise, the new lake created sports and leisure opportunities for many people, as we see in this charming photo of a couple ice sailing on Lake Gibson. The aerial perspective provided by this map here of 1916 allows us to see the impact of the landscape that hydroelectric power generation at DeQ Falls had on the alteration of watercourses and the landscape with the creation of Lake Gibson. Among the most significant impacts was the reorientation of arterial networks through the area from their traditional east-west orientation. Fast forward 3 decades, and the small hamlet of Beaver Dam Centre was surrounded by an extensive network of inland lakes set within a rather barren landscape. This photo was taken a year or so before Lake Gibson was further flooded for the second DeQ Falls generating station, leaving the lake as we know it today. My second last slide, because I'm getting to the end here, shows the last run of the NS&T Welland Division in March 1959, as it came to the famous crossroads, with Beaver Dams Church in the background, which you can't really see unfortunately here, and the Smith Cemetery in the foreground. In summary, I hope to have given you a taste of the evolution of the cultural heritage landscape at Beaver Dams. This map here that's included in the book identifies the area's various built heritage assets and features, both archaeological and extant, and gives you a real sense of the richness of the history, which perhaps most of us don't even fully appreciate. Even though the sustained human interaction within the Beaver Dam's landscape has been profound and diverse over the past 2 centuries, it is paradoxical that the latter 20th century natural regeneration has erased many of the more unattractive remnants of that activity. So you don't have the smell, apparently, that was normally associated with beaver dams and all, things like that, or the post-industrial landscape. In conclusion, I would like to thank those people and organizations that made this publication possible. First, I would like to thank Heritage Thorold, who are represented behind me, for its support and encouragement. Next, none of this work, and I mean this quite seriously, could have been done without access to the papers of Esther Summers that are at the Mayholm Foundation in St. Catharines. I also had the very good fortune to be able to meet with and discuss the village and its history with many people who either grew up in the area or were affiliated with Beaver Dam's church, in fact, specifically. I'm also extremely grateful for the few times I had the chance to speak with Alan Hughes about the trails. Finally, I would like to acknowledge with much gratitude the editorial support and access to resources provided by John Burtniak, who's in the back here. And we have copies of the book available for all the councillors and mayor right now, but other copies will be available for sale here at City Hall, I understand, and the museum by the end of the week. The book will also be sold at the DQ House Heritage Park this Saturday afternoon during the unveiling ceremony for the First Nations Peace Monument. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kinghead, for the great presentation. Are there
I
any
hope it wasn't too
questions
boring.
for our presenter? Any questions at all? None whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I've got the books here, and I don't know if Joanne
If you
wants to
can
distribute
give
them or.
it to one of our staff members there, and they'll distribute them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next presenter is Jean D'Amelio Swire, Chair and Ad Hoc Age Friendly Committee. She's going to talk to us about Aging in Place Forum, October 25th, 2017. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, councilors, and city staff, I'm just here to announce our Aging in Place Housing and Services on Wednesday, October 25th at the Ontario Paper Thorold Senior Centre, 8 Carlton Street, from 8:55 to 1 p.m. It's open to everyone. Members of the Senior Citizen Center can register at the Senior Citizen Center, and those who are not members can register online at reception@thorold.com. The full agenda is on the Thorold website, and this is a joint effort between the City of Thorold, the Senior Citizens Association, the Age Friendly Committee, and also Canada Mortgage and Housing. The day includes a presentation by Canada Mortgage and Housing entitled Aging in Place and Accessible Design, followed by light refreshments. Then we have the Halton Home Care Program is going to be presented, followed by a presentation on our nonprofit housing and the new proposed nonprofit housing. And then later, we're going to have a presentation from the region on affordable housing for seniors in Thorold and Niagara. And the morning will close with services helping seniors live at home, and that's going to be by Community Support Services of Niagara. We are going to have light refreshments in the morning and after a little social, so we're hoping to see the councillors that can attend, and again, the information is available at the Senior Citizen Center and online at reception@thorold.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jean. Are there any questions for our presenter? Seeing none, thanks a lot.
Just give me a second so I can close the projector. Can I close this?
Yeah, close that.
WeeStreem is having a hard time.
Okay, we're into communications and resolutions. Our first one is items referred to council, City of Thorold, transit services within the City of Thorold. Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Hanley. Whereas transit bus service currently operating in the City of Thorold as route number 331 and number 431 be restricted from the loop on Winterberry Boulevard effective January 1st, 2018. And whereas these routes are currently funded by Brock University Student Union, BUSU, and whereas these routes were implemented without notice or consultation with the Council of the City of Thorold and members of public, and whereas a new route be provided to city staff for approval by council, and whereas that any future funding required for municipal infrastructure that the City of Thorold or BUSU deems necessary for servicing any exclusive bus routes funded by BUSU, including but not limited to bus pads, bus layovers, and bus shelters, be funded and paid for by BUSU or other non-municipal sources. Therefore, let it be resolved that the current bus routes, known or assumed to be known as routes number 331 and number 431, within the City of Thorold be restricted from the loop or known loop on Winterberry Boulevard, effective January 1st, 2018, as endorsed and approved by the Council for the Corporation of the City of Thorold.
You wish to speak to that, Councilor Longo?
Yes, I'd like to speak first, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
By all means.
Okay. I'd just like to start with a little bit of history and a little bit of facts here for people who may not be aware. But I brought this issue forward in early 2016. At that time, I thought I had the support of City Council. It looked like we were going to move the bus off Winterberry. But I guess after a few phone calls and emails, that didn't come to light and I lost my support. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago regarding another issue on Winterberry Boulevard, and at that time I asked residents who were here if they had issues with this bus, because it's something that still concerns me greatly. And I know it concerns many of my neighbors in the area, because I do live in that area. After hearing that there was considerable concern still about these buses, I thought I'd bring this back up. And my reason here is, number one, a public safety issue. I feel that these large articulating buses, the double buses, traveling down Winterberry Boulevard, which is an arc from end to end with many blind spots, creates a safety issue. That is the number one reason why I believe we need to restrict this route. The other reason being is the route never came to council for approval. The route is funded 100% by Brock University Student Union. They pay for this route, they maintain this route, and it's managed by them. Again, no consultation with the City of Thorold, the council, and if there was, I'm sure the bus would have never taken off in the first place. I believe we need to keep buses in Thorold on the main arteries. And I want to stress that I'm not against public transit. I'm for public transit 100%. I believe we could even have more buses in Thorold. But we need to offer the service properly. We need to do it in a logical manner where the buses run in a grid pattern on our main arterial roads, not on secondary streets. If you look at St. Catharines, for example, they run most of their bus service in a grid pattern. And if you look at the Brock buses, they don't run on Jacobson or Masterson. They only run on Glendale and Glenridge. They don't go into neighborhoods. So I don't know why we allow it in Thorold. And I hope I have the support of council tonight to implement this, because I believe that we have to do what's right for the citizens of Thorold, okay, and for the people who call Thorold home. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Longo 100%. I was one that stated I believe this is a step in the right direction. We weren't consulted. And not only that, we see a lot of people in attendance here tonight. But the weekend after that happened, in that first council meeting we had here at City Council, after that episode, there were no representatives from Brock here that day. And to me, if you're a real corporate citizen and a part of the community, you would have known that the citizens of Thorold had concerns and would have been here at Tuesday night's council meeting, and you would have also put your name on the agenda to come here and defend yourself for what had happened in the neighborhood that night. And I believe we need to change, because right here it's Brock states themselves, although Brock officials have no jurisdiction or right to intervene for activities and locations beyond the campus, myself as a councillor, I do have that right. And it's the taxpayers and citizens of Thorold, I believe, that are here to raise a family and to do what's proper. And it's my jurisdiction as a councillor to look out for the best interests of, yes, the taxpayers, but the taxpayers of those Brock residents are absentee landlords. They're not responsible tenants within the city of Thorold as far as I'm concerned. And they show disrespect. I know this weekend, I believe there is instance of roofing where the city went in. I think this is the first step and the right step. As Councillor Longo said, we need to get them off the inner city routes. They don't do it in the biggest city in the Niagara region, St. Catharines. Why do it in the city of Thorold? Why? Because they've done it, as Councillor Longo said, without our knowledge. And I hope that council does get Councillor Longo's support for bringing the motion forward, and then the council here tonight doesn't stand up and defer the motion. Because if you defer the motion, I will bring a notice of motion forward to the next council meeting in regards to transit in the city of Thorold too, to follow this through. The time has come, councillors. I believe. I've sat on council first here in 1996. Other than losing the mayor's race a couple of times, I've been here every year since. And all I've ever heard year after year after year is what the concerns of my taxpayers are. Be it a bus route, be it parties, be it whatever. But when it comes to nuisance and the problems that we have in our municipality, they are towards Brock. And the only time to me Brock shows up is when the residents show up. And if the residents show up, Brock doesn't show up. They should have been here at the last council meeting like our residents were. That's who we need to look out for. I have nothing against education myself. Live wherever you want. But you know what? We need to respect the neighborhoods. I'm sure that there's a lot of people within this room wouldn't like the bus route going down their street in the fashion that they do. And I can honestly tell you, I clocked the bus. And I called Anthony Longo, Councilor Longo, when I was doing it. And I'm clocking the bus, reaching speeds in 60 kilometers an hour. And that was me after stopping and having to accelerate to the point where I got up to 60 kilometers an hour to catch a bus. That's not the truth. And where the road's coming around to going towards back to Richmond Street, going in a easterly direction, there was a white car coming the other way and was forced over to the side of the road. And where we have those parking spots right now, if those parking spots wouldn't have been emptied and that stuff, it could have been a near collision. And Councilor Long will tell you, I called him, I was doing it. I went out deliberately, 608, I'll tell you the route number and everything when I do it in the time. They are going to excessive speeds. It's not right in the neighborhood. It's about time council does what's right and do what the taxpayers want. The taxpayers, that the family people here, the people that got the children, not what Brock wants. And I say that, nothing against Brock, because Brock's never done, as far as I'm concerned, anything that I've wanted as a council. And as they state, once they leave the grounds, it's not their jurisdiction. That's right, it's our jurisdiction. We make the decisions, not Brock.
Hey, okay, that's enough. I'll empty this chamber right now. I will empty this chamber immediately if that happens again. We're going to be respectful and listen to everybody. Everybody has their chance to speak. That's a delegate. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to go a little bit further, can I ask staff, I would imagine that the bus pickup will be over on Richmond Street now. Do we have to do anything about adding additional stops along that route so we don't get like 300 or 400 kids concentrating in one area? Is there any staff that can answer that tonight?
What was your question again? I didn't hear. Can you speak into your microphone, Tim?
Sure, I have to sit down though. That's
Okay,
okay?
sit down, but.
Thank you. Being that we're doing away with this bus route, is there more anticipation of bigger pickups along Richmond Street so we don't get everybody concentrating on one area? Do we need to address it with further stops along Richmond Street to accommodate the traffic flow?
I guess if the route has to be changed, we'll work with BUSU and the Catholic Transit to see where the appropriate location for the bus stops would be.
That's great. And, Mr. Mayor, it's not a protocol, but seeing we do have some representatives from Brock here tonight, which we would have been nice to have at last meeting, like Councilor Hanley said. Can we ask them to speak and give us their idea of what's happening here? It was not, I know it's not a protocol, but
You want, okay, to add a delegate to the agenda?
yes, please.
You got to put a motion forward, and basically, you have motion forward to allow the person to speak.
Yes, please, if they're willing to, like somebody from Brock.
You
Like I
want
say, it would have been nice to have them last meeting, but since we
you
didn't.
want someone from Brock to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And have you chosen a person to speak?
I don't know which one. There's a couple representations here, so.
Person from the public also, Mr. Mayor, not to intervene, but if one's allowed to
Call a
speak,
point
then
of
all
order.
speaks.
Council Hanley, call a point of order if you don't like what he said.
Can I call a point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
That if we are going to allow a representative from Brock University here to speak tonight, then we have to allow a representative from the public to speak here tonight too. The people representing the taxpayers and the constituents that I represent as a taxpayer, they're the ones that put me in the seat that I'm in today, and they need to be heard too.
Okay, I want to hear some motions. Someone put a motion on the floor that you want to allow a delegate from Brock to speak, and someone else put a motion on the floor that you want to hear from the local folks in that area to speak.
That'd be fine, Mr. Mayor, if I could put that forward, please.
Pardon?
Yes, could you put both those?
That motion's on the floor. Councilor Whalen's put a motion on the floor to allow a delegate from Brock University to speak. Is there anybody from Brock that wants to come to that podium and speak? So I can have, Brad? Mr. Hutchins?
Can I ask for clarification, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sure.
Is it Brock or Goose you'd like to speak?
Either one.
Busu, how's that?
Unless they're addressing the
We have
same
to
issue.
vote on it first.
Yes, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, I'm asking for someone from Busu to come and speak on behalf of this issue. Please state your names.
Good evening. My name is Faisal Hijazi, and I am the president of the Brock University Students Union.
Chris Green, General Manager of the Brock University Students Union and a resident of Thorold and Confederation Heights.
Mr. Mayor, council, city staff, and members of the public, I thank you for having me here to speak today. A few of the comments that have been said today, I won't lie, are a little bit disheartening. I read an article on the weekend, and it was titled, "Thorold, a City Being Destroyed by Students." And as a resident of St. Catharines and a community member of Brock University as well as Thorold, it's very difficult for me to read. First off, I'd like to start with Councilor Longo. Thank you for your point. I appreciate your concern. But with all due respect, the point that you raised is completely incorrect and false. I'm sure the mayor can attest to this.
Can you
I'm sure-
speak more into the microphone?
Yes. So what I'm saying is the point that you raised is, with all due respect, false. We did consult council. The mayor was consulted. Councilor Ugolini was consulted. The CAO at the time was interim, was also consulted. We brought forth the routes. We showed you exactly what we were going to do in the city of Thorold and the city of St. Catharines and Welland as well, and they were approved. I don't know if they were brought to your council, but there was a subcommittee that was created, and we further on proceeded. Now, last year during this time, myself and my predecessor, Patrick Foster, our old president, came to this council with a very similar presentation to talk about the economic input of students to the city of Thorold, to talk about, how the students and the community have to work together to make things better. And some of the resolutions that we came up with was to come up with a town and gown committee, which was then constructed, and we met 4 times last year, and it's still happening until today. We also agreed to consult the city of Thorold, which we've never done before. We pay for $4.4 million of routes for our students. And like I said, with all due respect, the point that you made of us not consulting you and you being upset about that is completely false and incorrect. We did present this, and I don't know if the mayor or Councilor Ugolini wants to.
I'm going to speak on that. Through you, Mr.
Can he okay, go
Yeah,
ahead,
through you,
Tom.
Mr. Mayor. We weren't consulted about the route of Winterberry. So to get that clear, the route was already in service. And Chris, you know, we were consulted about changing routes and rerouting routes that were already in existence. So the actual route that Winterberry was never came to council. The route was already in existence when we talked about redefining routes. So I want to clear that so people don't know I approved the Winterberry route, because that's not correct.
Mr. Chair, with the origination of the Winterberry route, which would have been 2014-15, we brought to this council and showed the email from back and forth from the CEO of Mr. Frank Fabiano at the time, who we had sent into the route additions, had given us the okay for the routes. From our end, we had followed what we thought was the protocol, and again, we brought that to the council last year. We talked about that at the time. What I was wanted to hopefully speak to is I live in Thorold as well. I'm a resident. These councilors represent myself as well. I live on Coleman Court, right off Kiefer in Confederation Heights. I've lived there for 3 years with my 5-year-old son, my 3-year-old daughter, and my wife. We moved to Thorold because when I lived here as a student, I lived on Tupper and thought it was a great experience. I'm a lifelong St. Catharines resident. We moved to Thorold to buy our dream house, if you will, as I keep hearing the word dream house thrown around a lot, so I guess I'll use it. We came in and we bought it, and I've lived there since. And my concern, and I had this conversation today with Councilor Longo, and we've already said, we agree to disagree. We don't see eye to eye on this issue, but at least we're able to have a conversation, be respectful to each other, and we do that in our town and gown meetings. Some of the concerns that I brought up with the Winterberry issue, I understand that there's major concerns with student conduct on Winterberry, for sure. I see it, I drive it, I've seen it. I don't have to deal with it specifically beside my home. There's 3 student homes on my street. Luckily, I've got students on my street that are very respectful and good, and I think that's the majority of students in the city of St. Catharines and the city of Thorold. But if you look at Winterberry, and we look at removing a route from Winterberry, last year alone there was 133,000 uses. Now I don't know how many exact people. I can only see rides there and back. It could be the same people. But what I do know is there was 13,000 non-Brock University students that rode that route. Those are also the citizens of Thorold. If you move this route down to Richmond and Richmond, Richmond and Richmond, you've got an entire end of Winterberry that is undeveloped, has improper lighting, massive weeds, a constant construction, no sidewalks, and when students are they're still going to take the bus. Citizens are still going to need to take the bus. When they walk down that path, I sure hope that there's nothing that happens there from a car accident, from someone there to assault somebody, because if that were to happen, the citizens, I know as my being a citizen, I would say, what happened here? Why did this occur? And the answer is going to be, because no direct route happened on that spot there, because that was taken off. Now, I understand there's concerns. I will tell you, and I said this to Councilor Longo, I spoke to Councilor Ugolini as well, I think that this is a Band-Aid solution. I think that trying to make Thorold undesirable to live for students is a flawed plan. It's not going to work. I can assure you that if you think you're going to move them off Winterberry, they're going to go to somewhere else. We're going to be in the same spot. When you have these 133,000 rides, plus the 13,000 rides from citizens, you are going to have people walking across people's lawns, looking for shortcuts to get there. Citizens alone, not just students. When it's cold and there's snow, they're not going to walk from the middle of Winterberry to the corners in direct lines, especially when there's no sidewalks. We're going to be at this issue again and again because of these issues. The other piece that I wanted to say, sorry, you want to jump in? Good.
Well, also, I just want to reiterate that our students are taxpayers. They're also citizens of the city. And you keep on mentioning, Councilor Longo, that you're here for the taxpayers. Our students are also taxpayers. They're paying property tax, they're contributing to local businesses and the economy here. And they are they have the right to vote as well. Also, I wanted to just clear up a point. You first brought up the issue saying that you wanted to do this because of public safety. That was your first concern. But Councilor Hanley, you brought up the idea that this came up afterwards because of the issues that were raised in Thorold. So you both have conflicting arguments. You're saying it's due to public safety, and you're saying it's because of the issues that happened in Thorold. I just want to give some statistics that might open your eyes of how much our students contribute to this economy and why Thorold has been thriving for the past 5 years. 73% of our students are spending over $6,000 on living expenses like groceries and rent per year. 66% spend $1,200 per year on entertainment, bars, restaurants, music, and so forth. 21% spend over $3,000 a year on these items. And lastly, 99% of survey respondents said they went to restaurants on a monthly basis, and 66 were spending $50 or more per month. You can boil that down to a rough economic contribution per student by taking conservative averages. Assuming the average student will spend $6,300 a year on living expenses and $1,800 on entertainment, we can see that each student contributes roughly $8,100 a year conservatively. Assuming 80% of our living expenses per month are kept in Thorold municipality and 50% of entertainment are going to things like bars and Moose and Goose and Big Red Meats, it's spent here as well, the contribution per student to the Thorold economy is $5,940. At that economic value, every 182 students that live in the city of Thorold contribute to $1 million in revenues to the Thorold economy. We have roughly 5,000 to 6,000 students living in Thorold, contributing to about $27 to $32 million in the economy. So I just want to put up the numbers there of how much our students have been contributing to this economy.
The last piece I'll say before we kind of end, we're not up here trying to say that what happened on Winterberry on that homecoming weekend is right. We're not condoning that. We put a message out, Faisal did himself, to remind people who are in Grapevine, listen, like, you need to be part of this community. Me and him and I both sat on the town and gown committee. We're not here to condone that. We're not here to say that garbage on the front lawn is okay. We're not here to say that garbage on your lawn is okay, or the broken glass. We all know that's not right. Councilor Longo said it perfect to me on the phone today. I can't put bubble wrap around people and make them not do dumb things. We can't make students be respectful of the neighbors. This is a very small percentage of the number of students living in the area. I know it seems like it's a vast because it just happened. That's recency bias. That's what's going on. When I say this is that we're not up here condoning those things. What we're saying is the transit being the target reason may make sense to you looking at it in the next day or the next week, but I can assure you that this is going to cause a number of other issues that this council is going to have to deal with, that these citizens on Winterberry that are going to have to deal with. And I'll tell you, like, as a taxpayer myself and continually calling only citizens taxpayers, so I'll use the verbiage that's being used in this room for the past year, I wouldn't want my council to sit here and say that I'm all for buses, that I'm all for increased transit, but I want it to be as least as accessible as possible. That you can't separate the two. They go hand in hand. Transit needs to be accessible. I understand we talk about a grid system. The city's not built on a grid system. Look at the roads. Look at the presentation we had from the history piece. It's trail roads. It's not built like St. Catharines. It's not built on a grid. The largest areas of population live on small interwinding roads. I think people need to understand that, and I think that the buses, while it seems like that might be the quick fix, it's not the fix. It's going to cause more concerns. We're willing to, like I said to Councillor Ugolini on the phone today, we're willing to loop that bus so it stays off the one end of Winterberry, but again, I need this council's permission to route it down a side street, which we don't want to do. We can solve the problem of having it just go to the townhomes and come back, but we need a way out of the subdivision that was not built on a grid system. So, thank you for the time, and I'll pass it to Faisal for the question.
We have questions. Councilor Longo, then Councilor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need to clarify a few things, I guess, because I'll read the third paragraph again. Whereas these routes were implemented without the notice or consultation with the council of the city of Thorold and members of public. And I'll stand by that. That's the way it was. We were never consulted. Nobody on council knew that this bus route was going to be implemented. So I take offense to the fact that you say I'm not saying things that are accurate. That's my first point. I've got a lot of different points here. I was trying to jot down and keep my composure. There is a sidewalk. We have a sidewalk that runs from Fox Grape all the way back to Silver Maple and goes down to Richmond. So there is a sidewalk in place. Because I don't know how anybody would get out of that neighborhood right now without a sidewalk. So whether they're walking out today or walking out on January 2nd, there'll be a sidewalk for that. It's a public safety issue. And I know you said there was some conflicting things between myself and Councillor Hanley, but Councillor Hanley doesn't speak for me. What he says is his own. And what I said is very accurate. It's a public safety issue, period. That's how I feel. 133,000 walk bus rides and 13,000 citizen rides. Assumption. It's an assumption. Walk student friends going down for the weekend on rides. I don't think 13,000 residents use that bus
to travel to Brock University, because I don't know where they go in the summertime. They probably wouldn't travel. So throwing those numbers out are a little inaccurate. The numbers, the big numbers you were throwing around with Brock spends, we're grateful for that. We want Brock to continue to spend and for the students to spend. All we want is the bus routes to be put on a logical street. That's all we're asking for. And by the way, big numbers, everybody in this room, we spend $5.4 million a year in policing. We spend $15,000 a day in policing. And a large portion of that goes in the wrong direction. It goes into a few very limited student areas and takes away from other policing. What do we get in return? We get nothing. We get nothing from Brock University. Zero. And I know you're going to say, Brock, their hands are tied. But the money goes to St. Catharines, and it doesn't come to Thorold, and we get punished. And we saddle the burden. I'm getting off topic here, but it's a public safety issue. People are afraid to let their children out on the street. Massive buses driving down that street 30 times a day. It's wrong.
Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Councillor Long 100%, and for me to stand here as a councillor and believe that students wouldn't spend money in Thorold if we eliminated a bus route is unbelievable. They're still going to spend the money. It's got nothing about if we stop the bus, then you know what? Maybe we are on the right track then. If we start the bus, then maybe these students will move out of those neighborhoods and single families will move back in like we want to do, or I want to do as a councillor. So maybe it's a good thing. March 8th, 2017. Council originally requested that Brock buses run only on the city's major arteries and not on the secondary residential streets. This was supported by a majority of council, if not unanimously. Brock came back to council and said the changes would not be completed in time for the 2016-17 school year. We're going to 18 now. Council agreed to let Brock run his plan, but it would agreed that Brock would work with the city to come with alternate routes for the 2017-18. My concern is I don't believe much of anything has been done to date, which it hasn't. You implemented a route without council's knowledge. This is going back then. Council requested that Brock buses stop running on Winterberry, Summers, Kiefer, and Abbey, and for Brock and the city to come up with alternative plans. We still haven't heard anything about that. Although I don't think council at the time said which streets the buses should run on, I think the major arteries in Thorold would be DQ, Richmond, Collier, Beaverdam, Sullivan, Tupper, Ormond, Front, Pine, St. David's, and Queen Street North. That's March 2017, just for information purposes. We as a council have been trying to have dialogue and getting accomplishments done with Brock, but we've had no luck at it. Bus routes, as Councilor Arnold said, have been implemented without council's knowledge or our endorsement. So, relatively thinking, we never endorsed this bus route in the first place, so canceling it should not really be a big concern of council.
Chris, go ahead.
To address Councillor Hanley's concerns. After the motion came forward, we sat down, had a meeting with Councillor Longo, Councillor Ugolini, the CAO, and the mayor. We revamped the routes, put together a staff report. I believe the CEO could corroborate the report was put together, brought to this council last year. The adjustments were made to remove buses from the Abbey Road, which were requested, removed from the one end of Kiefer, which were requested, and rerouted out of DeQ and Confederation Heights. That meeting happened, I want to say probably, I can't remember the date, maybe April. We sat down, a report was put together, brought to this council, and all of those changes and the asks that were done were brought to this council. Of that. The change in the Winterberry in 2014-15, I can't speak to that. All I can speak to is that we sent it through the CIO. We were given approval from the CIO. Whether that came to council or not, we'll have to believe that it didn't come to council. We did it through the staffing report, and it wasn't a boost to not bring it to council. We brought it to the CIO from that end there through the staffing mechanisms. That's how we did that with the Winterberry route. We have the emails to show that. With respect to no change been made, we had to go in budget. We had to go and cut close to $800,000 in routes. We cut a number of them out of Thorold this year. We didn't have to. We could have cut them in other areas, but we did because we made the changes on Kiefer, like requested from originally. We made the changes on Abbey. There's only one route that goes down Abbey, and it's the city route that's gone down there for over 20 years, the 21 or the 321 now, whatever the numbers are calling. We rerouted buses out of past Richmond Street School because we had to do that. But we also, when we had to pick up the extra buses to go onto the 21, we kept it mainly on Richmond. And we made a promise to the city of Thorold in that exact same report that came to council that we would reroute students to the 321 or the former 21, the Confed bus, because every student that rides that is $1 per head to the city of Thorold. And to help offset the cost of that, what we did is we rerouted so the students would be using that bus as a primary route, and it's still the #1 used route. So the changes that were requested, we did that through a committee with Councillor Longo and Councillor Ugolini, with the CAO and the mayor, and they brought that report forward. They did all of those things, and it was less than a year ago. So to say that those haven't been changed and we haven't tried to make changes, it's just not fair. It is simply not fair. I know that talking about fairness is what's going on in the communities, but to say that we haven't tried to work with the city of Thorold, it's simply not true and not fair.
If I could just one last thing.
Councillor Sharon, then Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue that we're dealing with is, I think, a much bigger issue. We're talking about 2 bus routes. It's a bigger issue for the entire community. I will support what Councillor Longo has put forward, because I think it's the first step necessary to look at the entire, have staff and Brock universities sit down together and then bring back a package of how we can look at busing in the city of Thorold, especially in these residential areas, and to make it work so people are safe, make it work so that the maximum number of people are able to be brought out safely as well. There are people in the bus and outside the bus. Both have to be dealt with accordingly. We have to make sure we are moving people properly, but we need to make this first step to ensure the other steps take place, because I believe there are other places where this also happens, where there's potential danger because of the large buses moving things around. You've talked about some changes that are made. They're important to be made, and I agree 100% that they're done, and they're done properly. There still are existing problems. We both know that. We both know we have to deal with it, and we both know we have to deal with it properly. So that everybody in this room, no matter where you are, whether you're from Brock University or whether you live in that neighborhood, can feel comfortable. I drove the route of Winterberry. I couldn't imagine what it's like for one of these big buses to move through some of those areas. It's astounding to me, because I know where the students are actually living and where they have to be brought out of. And there's got to be a way to get them the shortest way possible to that bus and make it possible for them to go to school and come back. What bothers me more than anything else is a person who went to Brock University, has my degrees out of Brock University, the very fact that we are constantly talking about Brock in a negative way, including a bus. We shouldn't have to do that. There should be a working relationship between the city of Thorold, the people of Thorold, and the university. That's a very important part of our community. We know that. But we have people who take advantage of that situation because it makes money for them. And they take advantage of it in housing, and they take advantage of it in a lot of different ways. And we have to solve that problem, and it's been a long time in trying to do it. There are many men sitting and women who worked on these things over a period of time, and we're still not there yet. So I'm going to support this motion, because I think it's a necessary thing to get it moving in the right direction again. And the people came out here tonight. It's great to see you here, but it's for the wrong reason that you have to come out. And that's unfortunate that that's the way it is. The safety of people, the safety of not all the people who live there, but the safety of the students as well is really important. But it's important to do it in a good way for everyone to be able to satisfy their needs. And part of those needs are to get people into the school and back safely. And to get the people who live around, watch them do it safely. And that's why I'm going to support Councillor Longo's motion.
Councillor Hanley, then Councillor Payone.
No comments, Mr. Mayor, I'm done.
Councillor Payone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we all know, this is a very touchy issue. For the 7 years I've been on council, we've been dealing with it. And it's gone to a point where I think everyone's nerves are a bit heightened. And one of the things that I'm disappointed in is that there was progress made through the Town and Gown Committee, which led to the changes on Abbey and the changes on part of Kiefer. We were making progress. Should large buses that go fast on a residential street be dealt with? Of course they should. I'm just wondering why talks broke down and we're doing it in this manner. That's what is bothering me, that we're doing it in this way, and that we couldn't bring about the changes which need to be done the same way we brought them for Abbey and for Kiefer. I'm concerned about perhaps January 1st is an appropriate date, but because we haven't had talks and negotiations between all involved, I'm wondering where that date came from. Councillor Whalen brought up some good points about proper signage and communication. Are students on that side street going to come to look for a bus and find it's not there and not know why? I'm hoping it doesn't get to that point. And keep in mind that as hard as it's difficult to keep the two issues separate. We have two problems here. One is large buses going down residential streets, which do need to be dealt with, as it was on Abbey. The other problem is a minority of students wreaking havoc in neighborhoods, as they do. But it's a minority. Keep in mind that getting rid of a bus, we got rid of all buses transporting students. Remember, the majority of students drive cars, as attested to by the huge parking lots at Brock University. Most students don't take the bus, they drive. And those parties can still happen in the exact same way. So if we're talking about buses barreling down streets fast and oversized buses, that's one thing. But we keep bringing in the problems with the big parties and the yelling. We had another email recently about parties going on last week. They're constant, and that is a different issue that needs to be dealt with, that playing around with the buses is not going to solve. That is a different issue. Things such as the bylaws we're considering for licensing, that's one of the issues that will take care of that. Most people are here because they have students in their neighborhood which are causing havoc, a minority of students. Perhaps not as many would be here if the wild parties were to subside and we had just a huge bus going down the street. There would still be people here for that. But the big issue is the disruption of our neighborhoods by a few students who choose to behave in that way. And as you said, no one in their right mind condones that. I mean, we have to address the large buses of that, buses that large going down a residential are a problem. But I'm wondering whether enough has been put in place so that students who live there can take the appropriate bus somewhere else come January 1st. And so that's why I was hoping, I mean, are we going to, what happens after we pass this? Between now and January 1st, I guess my question to staff is what happens between now and January 1st? Are we going to all sit down to meet to find out how to move them off the street? What contingencies are we going to do? Are we going to go from big double buses to more smaller buses, which could be an issue that, you know. These are questions that I don't see being addressed tonight, and I'm worried that between now and January they may not be addressed. So I guess I'll stop making the speech and ask some practical questions. Those things such as timeline for implementation, what Councillor Whalen brought up about proper communication so that everybody knows where the buses are now to be taken. Practical thing, as much as this is a difficult issue, we have to ultimately resolve the practical issues that are raised by this, including large buses going down the street. I have to say that that is a problem. So, question to staff, is there a timeline of what needs to be done between now and January? Because we can say no buses on that, but we can't just say that and then sit back and pretend nothing else needs to be done. We need to do a series of things between now and January if we're serious about removing those buses there to make sure, because remember, most of those students who take buses on that side street are not students that cause problems. The minority of students cause problems. And I'd hate to punish some students who quietly take the bus every day to school because of a few people who can't observe bylaws. So those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Longo, then Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to respond to a few things Councillor Payon had mentioned there. Paragraph 4, I just put, whereas a new route be provided to city staff for approval by council. I don't think this administration or council needs to do anything. It's not our bus. All we're saying is put it on a major route, come back to us, and we'll approve it. Pretty simple. Go down Richmond Street, turn right on Confed. Done. You don't need to print new maps. This is 2017. It'll be 2018. It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be all over the place. Kids will know, or the students will know right away. Instantaneous. I don't think it's that difficult. It is a public safety issue. Large articulating buses driving down a street that's shaped as an arc with many blind spots. Simple. Get the bus off the street. Move it over to Richmond. Put new signs up. Bring a plan to council. Put it on Facebook. It's not that hard. 17 years this has been going on.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Neal, then I have Councillor Payon again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's been going on for a long time. I would agree with that. I believe we have bigger issues than the one route. I agree with the route. I don't think it should be on that inner city street. It should be on Richmond Street. We have other places that we have to deal with it, because if we're going to deal with it there, we have to deal with it on Summers. We have to deal with it on Queen Street. There's a number of other streets that the buses should not be on Queen Street specifically. So we have to deal with it. And it's a matter of sitting down with Brock and other to make sure that the route that we want to see happen, they don't have a real problem with. Having students come walking down a couple of blocks from Winterberry down to Richmond Street is not the problem. You did mention, though, that there might be a safety issue with them walking down there. Well, they walk down, the bus goes down Kiefer, but all the inner workings around Kiefer, there's no buses that go in there, and the students walk down from their inner workings in our South Confed neighborhoods, and I don't think we've ever had a real problem in that manner. So we have to deal with this. I think this is a first step to deal with it, but I think we have to deal with a lot more, as Councillor Payon mentioned earlier. That there's a number of questions that we have to answer. I don't think we really have to answer too much as far as this particular situation is concerned, because it's a simple thing, as Councillor Longo said, that we just move the bus onto Richmond Street and make sure there's enough stops so that students don't have to walk too far to get to the bus. We have another section of the Winterberry that's being developed right as we speak. And right now, from what I understand, going past it, is that it's going to be hard for students to walk down to Richmond Street from that part of Winterberry because construction is going on. I don't know how we're going to deal with that. But my thoughts are, and I guess a question is it January the 1st or is it next week? What in the motion states when this should happen? January 1st at the present moment. So I agree with moving the bus back on the major route. I think for the rest of Thorold, we're pretty well on major routes. St. Catharines, for the most part, not all parts, so there are some buses that go down inner city streets in St. Catharines too. But for the most part, they do go down major streets. Without further ado, I'll sit down and wait for the motion to be passed.
I have Councillor Payon and I have Councillor Ugolini.
Actually, Councillor Neal made a few of my points. I'll pass.
Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to go a little bit how we got here, okay? Councillor Longo's right. That route never came to council. It did come to council later, and we tweaked things, and we got it off Abby. But the actual route started without no public consultation, and it didn't come to council. So that's why we're here today, okay? Anytime we implement a new route, we should have public consultation in the future, I'm talking, public consultation and a buy-in from all groups before we implement it. Now, there's 80% of what Councillor Longo's trying to do here tonight, I agree with. There's about 20% where I know we're going to have other problems. I agree that, especially down the far end of Winterberry, and that's from Silver Maple heading towards DQ Road, there's buses should never be on that street, should never be on Silver Maple. But we got a congested student area and we know it. So we're going to say pull the bus off that area. Let's move the bus off Richmond Street. Now we got to get the students to Richmond Street, so don't think that's not going to cause a problem, because it is going to cause a problem. We got a construction area there. So if they don't go through the construction area, they're going to go down and they're going to start cutting down Silver Maple. And they're going to be cutting across people's lawns because there's only a sidewalk on one side. So don't think that's not going to be a problem for the people that live on Silver Maple. Then they're going to go down Raspberry Trail, maybe come out that way. It's going to be a problem for the people that live on that street. What about the people that live on Futura and have hundreds of students waiting against their back fence now? So don't think that we are solving all the problems here tonight, because we're not. What we need to do is make sure this never happens again. So how do we get there? I agree with a lot of what you're trying to accomplish, because I agree that the biggest problem, and I'll tell Brock this, is when you went to articulating buses. I live on Kiefer Road. My whole house shakes every time an articulating bus goes down my street. And that's a fact. I've got wine glasses in the cabinet. I hear them rattle every time I know it's bus time. So, I mean, we know that articulating buses are a problem. Articulated buses have caused a bigger problem on Winterberry as well. So issues that, why we're here today, are issues that should never happen. They did. But I don't want to make a piecemeal decision on how we solve it. I think we have to have a good plan in place, implement it, but we need the plan in place to implement it and make sure we have public consultation when we do that. Because I'm going to tell you, we're going to be in here and we're going to have people from Futura, Silver Maple, and areas around there coming to council and say, what are you doing? So don't think tonight that this is a magic wand and the situation's over. We need, and I think Councillor Neal mentioned this before, a transit plan throughout the whole city so that as we move forward, we know exactly where we're heading. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Pion and Councillor Longo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. What Councillor Ugolini said and Councillor Neal said also before is what I was trying to get forward before. You can't just say we don't need to do anything more, let's move this to Richmond. But Councillor Ugolini mentioned some problems that might come up. He actually mentioned some I had never considered. So that's why, for the future, doing this through sit-down negotiations with a proper plan in place, with a timeline, it's not just good for those who want to see buses there, but good for those who want to get rid of buses from that side too, because it needs to be done right. Otherwise, we're switching the problem from one part of Confederation Heights to another part of Confederation Heights. And that's doing things by putting out these little fires like whack-a-mole, and they just keep popping up all over the place. We're not going to solve the overall problem of transit in Thorold, specifically transit of large numbers of students, how to get them efficiently to Brock. So the other thing that I think, if the issue is safety, then articulated buses are where we should be talking about, because that's the big problem. Articulated buses going perhaps sometimes over the speed limit, which they do, I've seen them. So maybe that needs to be addressed, and the articulated buses themselves need to be talked about. And, well, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to allow Chris to speak to that.
Just on the issue of the articulated buses, for knowledge,
We don't decide as Busu or Brock what buses go on there. The articulated buses get put on based on load basis. So instead of having two buses, like a bus follow another bus, they've got the articulated buses now. It's issues in St. Catharines as well. There's certain bridges now, the articulated buses are too heavy to go over the CN rail bridges down by Cat's Caboose on Glenridge. So with the buses, it's either a bus follows another bus for pickup of load, or it's the articulated bus. Right now, with the contract, the way it works out with the Thorold contracting out their transit to St. Catharines and us contracting with St. Catharines, the St. Catharines Transit Commission makes all those decisions on what type of bus it is, whether it's a hybrid, articulated, or two buses following each other. So just so everyone knows, that's how the bus decisions get made. It's not us, it's St. Catharines Transit decides what needs to go on that route based on the ridership.
Thank you. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick comment, because I'm not sure if Councillor Ugolini would like me to add Kiefer Road to this. Because we could add Summers, we could get all done at once. What I'd like, Mr. Mayor, that's my last comment. I'd like a recorded vote, though, if I could, please.
Thank you. It's a recorded vote. Are there any other speakers? Go ahead, Councillor Sharon.
I think what we're looking at is a plan between now and the beginning of January, where we sit down, staff, Brock, transit officials, whatever is necessary, to put together a plan that makes sense for that area, that satisfies the requirements of the people who live there and satisfies the requirements for the students. And we need to have that happen now and have it ready to go for January 1st. And that has to come before council before it actually goes into being on January 1st. In other words, it's going to happen, we're going to see it in December. And so I guess what this really is asking is that through this motion, that staff starts working immediately to put together the plan that works and makes some sense. And that comes back here to get passed.
Okay, would you consider, I think that's the job of the Town and Gown Committee, because it has everybody on it. But, you know, we can't convene a meeting for an hour and a half and leave and come back a month later. It's going to require time on everybody's part, and that includes the administration at Brock. It includes Busu. We have a number of citizens who live in the area that are on that committee. And that's basically what their job is. But you can't have a meeting on August 25th because the school year's going to start and we got to lay a plan down. That doesn't work. The bottom line is, if you want to do that, we have to have serious buy-in, not lip service. I know that the president of Brock says that we have to come out with a code of conduct for students' behavior off campus. I haven't heard anything yet. Mind you, it was only 2 weeks ago. I'm hoping something can come forward, but I'm not too confident that could happen because Brock doesn't have any jurisdiction off campus. That's what I've been told. We have to know that the Niagara Regional Police have to be there. And we don't want, from a council's perspective, from my perspective as mayor, I don't want to hear lip service. I want to see action. I want to see people working on a solution. No more lip service. We'll go to the meeting, disappear, and then hell breaks out in all the neighborhoods. And the buses are just speeding. I've seen them. I stood on the corner on Winterberry, and man, they're flying. And those are articulating buses that are flying. So maybe the transit system has to be part of this committee to tell these bus drivers, slow down. There's children in the neighborhood. Councillor Sharon, you're bang on, but I got a feeling that I think this is a job of the Town and Gown Committee, and everybody has to have buy-in. Everybody has to be there, including the administration at Brock University, including Busu, including the Niagara Regional Police, including the citizens around here who want to come. Our council representative, myself. And I'm telling you right now, what is disturbing for me is the amount of time that we've used staff, the staff hours that have gone into the student issues is unbelievable. I can't have this gentleman next to me sitting here all day long worrying about dealing with student issues. He's got roads to build, he's got water, sewer pipes to put in the ground. He has so much on his plate, it's unbelievable. We're in budget season. It's huge. The amount of hours that we put into budget season is unbelievable. 12 hours a day easy. Ms. Morrow, 12 hours a day easy, putting together a budget. We're in budget season. We have other jobs to do, not just student issues. And I'm saying that now, if we convene the Town and Gown Committee, everybody better be there. I'm not putting up too much staff time into this, because, like I said, they've got too much work to do. I think I've said all I have to say. Is there any other speakers before I call a question? Anybody else? I've said my piece. Recorded vote. You're taking a recorded vote.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. What are we voting on? What we see in front of us?
What you see in front of it. Start on the right.
Councilor Uccolini?
Yes.
Councilor Neal?
Yes.
Councilor Whalen?
In favor?
Councilor Longo?
Yes.
Councilor Handley?
Yes.
Councilor Sharon?
Yes.
Councilor Payon?
Against.
And Mayor?
Yes. That's carried. Unfortunately, we didn't get any, the residents' delegation to come up and speak, but I don't think we need to. Okay, I'm going to move on in our agenda. Okay, we're back in communications and resolutions. List of committees, minutes, correspondence. Oh, they got to pass, oh, yeah. Okay, items referred to council, City of Thorold, Arena Ad Board Policy, Councilor Uccolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Neal, whereas prior to September 19th, 2017, the renewed previous ad boards were installed on the new boards at the Frank Doherty Arena. And whereas on September 19th, 2017, a motion was passed by council for a moratorium to be put in place to suspend further installations of ad boards in our arenas until a clear policy is laid out regarding the type and installation methods. Therefore, be it resolved that staff prepare a report and recommendations be presented to council detailing a clear policy regarding ad board type, installation methods, and maintenance program moving forward.
Thank you, Councilor. Speakers to the resolution, go ahead, Councilor Uccolini.
I can just say that we met with the ad company and senior staff, and we had a good meeting. There should be a report coming to council next meeting because the ad company wants to move on this because they have ads that they want to get up. So I'm expecting a report to council at our next meeting. And we'll see what the final report and the recommendations from staff.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, now we'll go down the list of committees, minutes, correspondence for volunteer committees. Councilor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Uccolini, that the communications on the list of correspondence 6D, minutes, correspondence from volunteer committees be received for information purposes and filed.
Are there any speakers to the resolution? Go ahead, Councilor Neal. There's
Just
any items
one
to be pulled?
on 6, 6D7, Lake Gibson Corridor Task Force Group. I will be bringing 3 motions forward regarding situations that are on that particular report, so if anybody that wants to take a look at them, I will be bringing motions forward under other business.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other speakers? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Reports, correspondence for the region of Niagara. Counselor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sharon, that the communications on the list of correspondence 6E, reports, correspondence from the region of Niagara be received for information purposes and filed.
Thank you, Counselor. Are any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Items for information purposes, Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Neal, that the communication of list of correspondence 6F be received for information purposes and filed.
Thank you, Counselor. Items for discussion? Go ahead,
Can
Counselor
I
Whalen.
speak to number 2, please, Mr. Mayor? I'd like to ask your staff report. Again, looks like we put a knee-jerk reaction to putting those parking spaces, which were needed, but we didn't do the whole 9 yards again. It's similar to the issue we just spoke about the bus route. We did a little bit, but then we forced everybody else back into the neighborhood where they're being inconvenienced to help one area. So I'd like to ask the staff report that we look at that whole area and see if we can address the whole problem as opposed to just a portion.
Can you get that done? And repeat. Our clerk will repeat your motion.
Yeah.
Staff bring forward a report to address the entire area for the Winterberry parking concerns.
Thank you.
Is that what you want, or did you want something, add something else?
Okay, that's a motion on the floor. Because speakers to the motion, Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll second it first of all.
Yeah.
And it should be the west neighborhood and not just Winterberry. If I could just change it to the west neighborhood.
Okay. Speakers. Councillor Pion. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a great idea, and also the letter that we had here was a very thorough, detailed letter, including many suggestions of what could be done differently to still address the problem. So I would hope the staff gives, obviously they'll take it as input, but there's some very good suggestions in that letter about how we can still have the same effect, but with a different bylaw that doesn't perhaps just move the problem somewhere else.
Okay. Any other speakers? Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What we did as far as implementing a bylaw that was already on the books about apron parking is been very effective out in the community. There are some people that were inconvenienced, and there always is. We're never going to please 100% of the people. But the situation out there is 100% better than it was 2 weeks ago. And the other issue is that we implemented it fairly. You can't pick one part of the city and say we're going to have no apron parking here and we're going to put apron parking somewhere else. So we implemented it fairly. Yes, some people were inconvenienced and we're going to get some complaints, but I can guarantee you I've had way more people say how happy they are with what we did than people I've had complaining. Now, were we perfect? No, some people might not have known and there were some glitches, absolutely. But I think the intent was fair, and I think that moving forward, I'll be definitely maintaining that we support what we've moved forward on.
Councillor Longo, then Councillor Pion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Ugolini said. Winterberry's never looked so good. It's fabulous now. And kudos to Mr. Wild and his bylaw department. They've done a great job. A few changes. All we did really was enforce things that were on the book, and we're going to go forward and continue to do it. And we're going to do it citywide. It's the only fair way to do it. Unfortunately, some people are maybe inconvenienced, but I've had nothing but positive responses. So I just wanted to add that comment because sure you're going to get bad letters, but I've gotten a ton of great letters too and great compliments on the street.
Councillor Pion, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think what we did is mostly fine. I think the issue that I have that was brought up in the letter is the other bylaws in other jurisdictions that have done this, and I agree there's a big improvement, there should be no parking on the apron. But we have parking, stopping, and standing, which seems to be unique to, the stopping and standing is what I want to have looked at again. It literally says you can't stand in the apron of your driveway. I'm just wondering why. Is that in there, or is that, that's why I wanted to talk about this letter. Is that a misunderstanding by the person who wrote the letter? Or is that in the bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Those terms come out of the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay.
The parking, stopping, and standing have three different things. Standing, I believe, is less than 5 minutes. Stopping is more than that. No, is immediate. And then parking is long-term.
Okay, because that's really the only issue I had. I agree with what Councilor Ugolini and Councilor Longo said. They have cars. Is it better that they put it on the apron of the road or park appropriately in where parking is allowed? Of course, it's better to park where parking is allowed. So I'm not at all asking for taking back the bylaw and going back to where it's a huge improvement. It was the stopping and standing part that I just wanted clarification with, because it could be misunderstood, as this resident did, that there's certain things that, they can't stop there to briefly unload their groceries or something like that. So I mean, that's the part that gets me. We can have the same effect if you probably just put no parking in the apron and leave it at that. I mean, I don't see why stopping and standing has to be mentioned.
I have Councillor Wayland and Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion I put on the floor by no intents means to go backwards what we've already started. I just want to emphasize we need to do more. And when I lived in Waterloo, there was mention about Waterloo in there. What we have in the wintertime with respect to no overnight parking, they have it all year round. It's fantastic. So maybe, and like, it's not my fault that somebody put 15 people in one house and they've got no place to park. So that's their problem, not ours. So I just want to make sure that we emphasize it and do a little bit more than just put what we've done so far and solve the problem, that whole area once and for all, rather than doing it once with a Band-Aid that we've put on so far.
Who else? Councillor Neal, go ahead.
Just a quick comment too is that we have to look at the whole neighborhood and not just Winterberry. I mean, we've got a new subdivision coming on stream. Are we going to do the marking of the parking spots in that area too? Are we going to look at Summers and do parking spots in that area too? I mean, we're opening up that we have to do more, and this is a first step.
Any other speakers? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I'm going to reports. Minutes of the General Committee meeting held on September 19, 2017. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Longo, that the minutes of the General Committee meeting held on September 19, 2017 be received and adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there items to be pulled in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Other business. Oh boy, here it's going to be. Councillor Hanley, Councillor Sharon, Councillor Ugolini.
I'll be quick, Mr. Mayor. Seeing that the City of St. Catharines on Monday initiated what will be a bylaw similar to ours, I'm asking that I put a motion on the floor that we have consultation in regards to the City of St. Catharines. And the reason I'm asking that, because I was going to put a notice of motion forward in regards to changing the nuisance bylaw, but we're talking to our bylaw enforcement, knowing that where I'm getting at is this, is that the maximum fine is $300 through the Attorney General's office, that in discussions, if they're looking to implement a bylaw like ours, that we should be soliciting the Attorney General in regards to increasing those fine amounts. So I'm not sure how to word the motion, but in regards to work in unison with the City of St. Catharines, in regards to what they're trying to accomplish, in regards to residential bylaw, in regards to students, but at the same instance, they're looking into their nuisance bylaw, and I'm wanting to strengthen ours. And I've tried to reach out to the Attorney General's office in the last couple of weeks myself, but I can't get nowhere because I'm just a city councillor in regards to the info or how to go about legislatively or as a municipal. Because my point is this, a fine's $300. It means nothing to these these students, whatever, I was gonna say children, but still, well, they're like children, the way they act. But students, whatever, and that stuff, so I'm looking, let's strengthen it, and I know we're like, by legislation that we can only do a maximum fine of 300. But if we look through, I think it's section 8 or whatever in our nuisance bylaw, there's about 8 definitions, so we can hit them 300, 300, 300, 300, but it still isn't a deterrent. So I'm wanting to see, through you, Mr. Mayor, to put a motion forward that we solicit the Attorney General in regards to increasing the fine amounts for nuisance bylaws within municipalities, and do so within conjunction to the City of St. Catharines with what they're trying to accomplish. If you see where I'm trying to come across, like I'm trying to make it so that we got.
I think we need to get a report, a staff report on that.
I've been trying to do some.
Basically outlining steps. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, or could I put a motion, could I through you to the city administrator, maybe, Manoj, me having ideas? What you see what I'm trying to accomplish here is that our hands are tied with a minimum amount of fines. Yeah. We need to do something to get the government to increase it so we got some tooth and nail when we go in there, and I'm not just looking to target one individual, but let's make it, it's got to be for the whole city. If I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, ask the CEO.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly the maximum allowable fine is 300. We all know that. It doesn't hurt us trying in conjunction with St. Catharines, writing a letter or a joint letter with 2 mayors, sending it out to Attorney General's office just to say that yes, considering our unique situation, if they can able to increase it, certainly we can request that from them.
So I motion forward in that context, Mr. Mayor, that the City of Thorold, in conjunction with the City of St. Catharines, write a letter to the Attorney General in regards to the maximum fines in regards to nuisance bylaws.
Okay. I need a seconder. Councillor Whalen. Okay, speakers to the resolution, to the request. Councillor Neal.
A quick thing, AMO is our provincial representative, and maybe we need to get a report, but move forward and maybe have other communities, like I'm sure, Waterloo and London and Oshawa and all the different communities with universities specifically. Maybe we need to go further afield in what we're doing with just St. Catharines. But let's get a report back and see what way we can get the Attorney General to do something.
Well, we could put it through in the form of resolution, I believe, that it would be forwarded to other municipalities. So I'll add that to the motion, that it be put in the form of resolution. Therefore, all of the municipalities will be forwarded my motion.
Okay. How about it in the form of a notice of motion?
Do I really?
What do you think?
If I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I guess if you put a resolution, we can certainly circulate that resolution to other municipalities and then see what kind of support that we gather. More the better. If we get support from various municipalities, they are in support of us. Certainly we can show when we send a letter out to Attorney General's office that we have support from these municipalities. And I think the resolution also say that if you agree with us and all those things, please respond back to us so that we do collect some sort of census that who is in favor, and then when we write to Attorney General, then we can say that we contacted all the municipalities in Ontario, and then we received so many feedback, so many in favor of it. Maybe if that is a route that we can go.
Can we go that route, Mr. Mayor? Then I wouldn't have to put a notice of motion forward, I believe, right? Through the clerk? Can I do that?
Yes, we can.
Then that would be.
You're coming next week you'll work with notice of motion?
For a resolution in regards to that, then.
Okay, can you bring it back under notices of motions?
Yeah, I'll come back on the notice of motion and bring it up, and then I'll go with the city clerk. Yeah, she has the wording basically, and then we can just work on it.
Okay. Okay, I lost my speakers list.
And just one other, I was on the list. Just one other thing I have, Mr. Mayor, and I'm done. I know that we brought up in regards to trees, and that council is bringing a report forward, or staff is in regards to trees. Can I be notified for sure? Because if staff's bringing a report forward, I'm asking for a representative to be here from a couple companies that supply forestry equipment. because I'm sure that if I know that, because through you to the CAO, it had been mentioned that at the next meeting, possibly a report's going to be coming forward in regard to the tree service and what the costing would be for the city of Thorold to do themselves. So at that night, I was going to have representatives here from different forestry companies in regards to how much costing may be to supplying equipment.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the Director of Operations is not here, the Acting Director. Intent is that at next council meeting, a report would be presented which will show the cost of doing that business in-house and if it is contracted out as sort of a comparative evaluation. Just in case if there is a change in plan, we'll let you know ahead of time, or either way, so that you can inform others if you so wish. Thank you.
It's just I can have representatives from the forestry division here that would supply the type of equipment needed. Thank you very much.
I have Councilor Sharon Ugolini, then...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine is very simple. Thank you very much for your kind words earlier about the Terry Fox Run. I want people in the city to know that this is the largest number of people and also the largest amount of money that was raised. We will exceed $360,000 plus as far as money that will go directly to cancer research over the years. I have a list here of all the people who help in some way. It is probably longer than this card and should come up in the back page, including staff members like our firemen who help us across the street and all the other people involved. Certainly it's far from a one-man show. And I want to congratulate all of those people who were involved this year. They did a great job. It was a fun day, and I know that only good things can happen because of the money that's raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I have Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You've already mentioned the Canal Bank Shuffle. I'll mention it again on Thursday, October 12th to Sunday, October 16th. I hope to see everybody out. It's a great event and really puts Thorold on the map across North America. $25 in advance, $30 at the door. On December 10th, we thought the Canada 150 committee be done on the Santa Claus parade, but we're looking at now. I was notified that we should be involved on December 10th. It's a Sunday. Across Canada, the federal government's going to declare it Canada 150 nationwide skate, and they're after every municipality to become involved. And you have to have a 2-hour minimum skate on that day, and you can apply for funding for this event. So we will be doing that, and that would be a great way to end off our Canada 150 season. And that's that. One question I have, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager engineering. Do we have an update on the lights on Collier Road and Highway 58?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last update I had was that they believe they have a switch problem, and I believe they've been looking into it. Are they not on yet?
Well, I can't speak for the last 2 days. They were on the other day, so that's good because I received a lot of complaints, and if they're on, that is great news.
I have Councilor Neal, then I have Councilor Longo. Whalen, then not Longo.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it was good to see Sarah Head bring forward her book of beaver dams and area. It's a great book, and the reason why I'm up here now for 3 motions is that the Lake Gibson Task Force have been working on the area around that Lake Gibson, and I have 3 motions that I want to bring forward. The first one is moved by myself, and seconded by Councilor Ugolini. The council discuss a plan with the region to recreate a public park at the waterworks area and lands affected by the designated source water area on DeQ Road. And the reason for this is, as you know, it's fenced off. You can't use it at the present moment. And the committee feels that you can move the fence back enough and still have their fence there so that no one can throw something into the water to kill us all. So that's the reason why I'm bringing this motion forward, is for us to meet with the region, because it's a regional park, to discuss ways of putting that park back in shape again. And it will help as far as parking is concerned, because there's no parking along there, including Waterworks Park and including Morningstar Mill, including the DQ House. There's very little parking, and we could enhance the parking along that area also. So that's the reason why that motion is being brought forward.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay.
I've got it.
You've got it written down?
I got it written down. I can read it again. The council discussed a plan with the region to recreate a public park at the Waterworks Park, which is the name of the park that's there now, and see if we can't get that park back in utilization.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor, is to create a park at Waterworks Park, and working with the region who owns that property. I know, okay, that's a motion on the floor. Speakers to the motion? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
My second motion is to deal with a pathway along the Q Parkway. And already we have it, partly done, because Tom Rankin Construction put in our pathway from Richmond Street over to Maryville Highway. And my motion is being brought forward to create the rest of the parkway as a pathway over a period of time, not all at once. So this is...
Okay, this is going to cost a significant amount of money. I think that should be deferred to the budget deliberations, and staff should do a report on what it would cost to do this.
Yeah, okay, my motion, I'll just read the motion. The council create a budget and action plan to start engineering and constructing a recreational path along DeQ and Beaver Dams Road to add to the recently constructed DeQ recreation path on DeQ Road, and that this be referred to the budget process.
Okay, perfect. That's...
Oh, seconded by Councilor
Seconded.
Ugolini.
Okay. Speakers to Councilor Neal's resolution? I'll call none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
And my last one is moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Ugolini, that the council put a plan in place for the Lake Gibson Conservation Area to more accurately designate certain areas for recreational, cultural, and environmental purposes. And the reason for this is that there's certain areas of that park, I'll call it, that could be utilized for recreational purposes, whether it's just pathways or whether it might be trailer parks, or those types of things. Maybe we might have to rezone it or redesignate it.
Can you
or
move your
whatever.
microphone closer to you? Because it's okay.
To redesignate it, certain parts of that park to other purposes.
Okay. Do you want to? You didn't get it.
Okay, the council put a plan in place for the Lake Gibson Conservation Area to more accurately designate certain areas for recreational, cultural, and environmental purposes.
Okay, that's a motion on the floor. Speakers to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I have Councillor Wayland and Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first subject is, I can appreciate that staff has been really bogged down, but we haven't had the parking motion come forward downtown yet. We were hoping to have it in place by the time students came, and we don't have it. So I can appreciate them being busy. What I'd like to have motion put on the floor, that staff already did a little bit of homework with this respect. We've got 8 fire parking spots on the south end of the towpath parking lot, that they be flipped temporarily to the north end to the lot that isn't fully utilized yet, until we get the full parking report in from staff.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a parking report that is coming to this council as well that shows some steps. What are the next steps that we are going to undertake? And certainly, the parking strategy that has been rolled out in the past is going to be rolled out now. So, we certainly, I have had a chance to discuss that with our acting fire chief, and there doesn't seem to have any issues in relocating it. We will have a look at it, how that fits in the overall strategy, and then what can be done, and we can get, just don't want to do piecemeal, because now that we are at a point that we can roll out the strategy, and if it is that the permits, the enforcement and all those things has to happen in a very short period of time, relocating that may or may not be warranted, because I understand that the problem does exist today. But if we are rolling it out in a short period of time, I'll leave it up to our manager of engineering. He is going to present that report. If there is a delay in outlining this or presenting that strategy on ground, then certainly we can go that route. Thank you.
So that being the case, what are you looking at short period of time? Like, it is only 8 spots, and it would just be hopefully on a temporary basis till we get the whole program rolled out. But 8 spots are 8 spots, and they really could come in handy in the morning. So you can bring that in a short order to be appreciated. And my next item, I don't know whether I need an actual motion on this or not, but the BIA is looking at beautifying downtown Thorold. So we're looking at putting twinkle lights in all the trees on Front Street. It'll cost probably between $10,000 and $12,000. But it'll be an impact, we don't know how much of an impact with these little twinkle lights. There'll be about 480 lights per tree, and they're all LED. So it'll be a little bit of an impact to our budget with respect to electricity that they use. So I don't know whether I need a motion on that, or we can just go ahead with council's blessing to move forward with that.
Well, that's, I don't know. I would think it's a BIA project. Just go ahead and do it.
That's great. Like I say, as long as, I just want to bring that council up to speed. I know there's been discussion.
I would think you would consult with staff on it as you're going along.
Okay, so we'll talk further with staff.
Yeah, keep staff in the loop, but it's...
And my last thing, this past week there was a worthwhile cause that was done by a restaurant on Albert Street, Cook for the Cure. And I've had some concerns with the BIA members that this was done in a fashion that it wasn't proven the same as the rest of the BIA have to go through. In other words, with the getting hold of EMS and the bus route and so on. I believe it was just done by staff. I don't recall it coming to council unless I missed it. But in the future, if we can have due diligence to give them the same respect as the rest of the BIA does with respect to closing off a street. It was a worthwhile cause, but I say if everybody's given the same preference on that, it'd be appreciated.
I have Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing. Our tourism provider was here tonight, and she asked if somebody could look into the shrubs and trees and Trillium properties. So if the proper staff member could make a phone call, see if they could clean it up a bit and help her out.
Any specific area along the Trillium properties?
Near the viewing center, I believe.
Yeah, okay. We have to look at cleaning. Mr. Martin? Mr. Wild? Mr. Martin?
I've actually already had a discussion with Sue on that. That land's not ours. It's railways and what's that fund called? Trilliums. So the issue is, because the slope of that property, I don't know who we're going to get to go out there and cut those things down. The insurance is going to be ridiculous, eh? So I have to put some thought into it, but I don't know how we're going to do it. We can't do it from our property, and we've got to get permission to do it from their property, and to get a contractor to go in there, try and get somebody and get some quotes and see what kind of insurance we can get.
Councilor Pleon, same issue?
Yeah, just to speak to that through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure, if we're talking about the shrubs which grow tall enough to block the view.
Sumacs.
Yeah, then I would agree. There's other things there. Sumacs is one. There's other things. Just to be clear, we're not talking about any of the large, true trees that we're going to start chopping down just to get a better view of the canal, because I would be opposed to that. But this is an issue all along there. I actually have neighbors who have complained to me about their view of the canal being blocked. So all along there, from the viewing right down the locks, it's an issue. And I know for a fact that some neighbors have just taken to going on those slopes themselves and just chopping things down. So I don't know if Trillium isn't opposed to that. Maybe, if somebody wants to do that, but I don't know what the liability issues are for that.
Councilor Neal?
Same issue, Mr. Mayor. I've been through this for about 20, 25 years, and you have too. And I disagree with not chopping down the trees that are there now, because that's what you have to do if you're going to get the view back again. I mean, I've helping along that stretch of corridor there, going down the hill and chopping trees down. And there's two items. CNN owns the land. Trillium leases the property. So you have to deal with both of them, Mr. Wild. And dealing with them is going to be a real headache. But they should be cutting them down. They should be keeping that property, because it used to be they had enough money to keep that property from growing up. And as you know, Councillor Peel, your neighbors have gone down the side of the hill and try to keep it in shape and that themselves. I think it's worth a while to sit down with them, whether we get anywhere with them or whether we have to go the political route and go further up the chain, up to the province, and have the province or even the feds come down, have Vance Badaway take a look at it. But I think you might have to go that far. But I think I agree with the speakers earlier that you almost can't see the canal now. So I think we should go ahead and try and see, which avenue that we can go at to make sure that it happens. Because if not, then we might as well fold up that information center and put it somewhere else, because you're not going to be able to see the canal.
Okay, the bottom line is too, you can't just go in there and chop everything out of there. The root structure of those trees hold the bank up. That slope is held in place by the roots. So you got to be so careful about what you do. You got to, no matter, even if it's a sumac, you got to leave that much sticking out of the ground. And it's going to grow in 5 years. It's going to be back the same size. But you can't just go in there and rip those things out. The whole bank will slide.
I'm not asking them to be ripped out. I'm asking them to be chopped down, and then get them to every 5 years. They have the machines to come along and do that.
Yeah.
As I'm sure Councillor Hanley will tell you, that they have the machines that come along the tracks and they go on both sides of the tracks and just chop them down, leave them about that far, and do it every 2 or 3 years and keep it chopped down.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we can do a resolution, then we can forward that resolution to Trillium and CN, that this is our request, if that works. Thank you.
Okay. Motion's on the floor by Councillor Longo that we approach Trillium Railways and CNR and see what we can do about having them come along and trimming both sides of the bank. And I think the problem there is Seaway owns the other side. Okay, that's that.
One word to that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Properly pruned trees.
Yeah.
Properly, because what they do is, what I've seen happen is they go in there and just hack away. And it's disgusting what happens to what we should be protecting. We're cutting down a forest of trees in the city now because of an infestation of bugs and that are killing the trees, and to kill more ourselves for the sake of because if we do it, you want to believe the people who are down all the way down that little row are going to do the same thing on their own, and it'll be a mess.
Did you get that one? You want to repeat it for us?
So I have here that staff approached Trillium and CNR and the St. Lawrence Seaway and see what we can do to properly groom both sides of the bank.
That sound right? Okay. Speakers to the motion. We've already spoke to it, so I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Where am I? Okay, that's all the speakers under other business. No bylaws. Notice of motion. Councillor Hanley, you have a notice of motion.
A notice of motion, Mr. Mayor, in regards, thank you, Mr. Mayor, actually. A notice of motion in regards to a letter to the Attorney General in regards to a resolution to be sent to other communities in regards to nuisance bylaw and the ability to increase the fine statute as it stands today. To the next council.
Thank you, and you'll work with our clerk's department. Thank you. Okay, adjournment, Counselor Longo.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Ugolini, that this meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:54.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break. Are there any comments? Councilor Longo.
Yeah, for DES 2017-81.
DES.
Declared a conflict last time we came up with
Reason for your conflict?
it. It has to do with hiring a real estate.
Okay, reading the finance report, PF 2017-23, capital project status report, July 31st, 2017.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that report DF 2017-23 be received for information purposes.
So move the report.
Thank you. Speakers to the report. Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned a few times tonight about doing budgeting, and it's hard to take that we passed a budget of 4.5% back only less than a year ago, and then since that time, we've been over on these projects only, which need to be done, mind you, but they should be put into the actual budget. Another 2.7% we've added to our overruns this year. And then it's a little disturbing, we've got a couple projects that are completed, and the dollars aren't approved. For example, there's one for $106,000 and another one for $68,000. That's a lot of dollars, and the work is completed, and we haven't approved it as a council.
What do you mean we never approved it?
They're completed, but the overrun report to follow, which I presume is not approved. I can get some clarification out of it, if you don't mind, please. So,
Ms. Morrow, can you answer that
Mr. Mayor,
question?
that's correct. They're not approved.
So $106,000 and $68,000, that's almost $200,000. The work's completed, and we haven't approved it as a council. Something's out of whack here.
Can staff help us out on this? Better explanation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're in the process of reviewing those ourselves. This report actually highlighted the fact that they were over budget. I wasn't aware that they were over budget. We are in the process of doing that. We think that the 106,000, we think there was a bit of a miscoding issue in terms of where we put the projects, but we're evaluating that with our staff and the finance staff.
So that being the case, can we get a report back once that's finalized, Mr. Mayor, to just see what the predicament is with this respect?
Absolutely, we will.
Thank you.
For sure.
Okay. You're okay
Again,
with
like I
that?
say, that we should do a little bit more due diligence with their budget. Like I said, we approved them for 4.5. 10 months in, we've already approved for 2.7% in just these areas. So why do we do budgets? Like we're pushing for 2%, I believe, is a guideline next year. We're going to overrun at 2.7 this year. So due diligence should be given a little bit more detailed specifics of just where we stand going forward. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're into development. DES 2017-70, zoning bylaw amendment 3460 Schmon Parkway to add clinic to the permitted use.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Landry? Thank
The
you.
recommendations of the report are that the proposed application to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 214097 to add clinic to the permitted uses in the prestige industrial PI zone with an accessory pharmacy use be supported, and that the zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for approval at this evening's special council meeting. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Could I get a mover for the report? Councilor Sharon?
I move the report.
Are there speakers to the report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-71, restricted parking on Winslow Crescent.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that council approve the parking restrictions on the south/east side of Winslow Crescent and the traffic and parking bylaw 150/2012 be amended to recognize the proposed changes. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore. Could I get a mover for the report? Councilor Neal?
So moved, and I'd like to speak on it.
Go ahead, by all means.
Just, again, it's just another, one single resident, or was it the whole street that contacted the city regarding this. Now, I understand you know, it being, the trucks can't get down it and all that, but the Winslow's been there for 60 years. And all of a sudden, we can't get our trucks down. Again, we're not dealing with the public in a public manner. We haven't asked Winslow Crescent people whether they want it or not, or on which side of the street they want it or don't want it. So I would like to defer this so that we can bring back a report regarding.
Counselor, you spoke to the
Oh, I
to the
can't do
report.
that, okay.
You have.
Okay, you're correct.
You have to get someone else to defer it. Counselor Longo?
Speak to it because I believe there's a bit of an error here. I think it should be the northwest side. I actually walked the street the other day, and I meant to call staff to let them know, but it should be the northwest side.
Okay. Staff will note that. And Counselor Neal?
Yeah, how many people were at, I mean, can I have a comment from our staff regarding how this came about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Following our normal parking policy, we were approached with a petition of about 50% of the residents on the street. As we do in any normal case, we then look for opportunities for our emergency services and so forth to comment about whether there is safety concerns, because that is what the resident actually suggested. The fire services then drove down the street with the truck and had a hard time getting through. So they agree that there is a safety concern, and once we were aware of the safety concern, then we put forward this report. No more public meeting required because no more options associated with that.
Just that I don't see anything anywhere here that says petition, and over 50% of the residents of that street.
Okay. Counselor Whalen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Neal. Usually the petition is inclusive in the report. So can we have that inclusive added to it? Like I say, this is a little misleading. It looks like one person asked for it, as opposed to having the whole, or 50% of the street. So going forward, other ones also, can we have the actual petition included like we normally would have?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, normally that would be the case, but in this case, because we are doing this, taking this action as a safety concern, this is not, we stopped asking the public.
No, I can appreciate that, but like Councilor Neal said, the house has been there for 60-some odd years. All of a sudden it's a concern now. It's been used quite frequently, I'm sure, by different safety mechanisms. But so, like I say, it would open up the whole proposal so we know exactly where we stand. Like I thought, and I'm sure everybody thought, okay, did one guy ask for this? All of a sudden, we're going to do it, as opposed to you did follow protocol, which was appreciated.
Counselor Sharon and Counselor Pion.
Well, my question is directly related to the paragraph that says both the fire department and engineering staff agree with the resident to eliminate parking on one side. Is that because the fire trucks can't get down there safely if there's parking on both sides of the street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
And then I wonder what the liability of the city if we cannot get trucks down there to deal with issues like even a medical emergency where our trucks respond to it, never mind a fire.
Okay. Counselor Pion?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if for 60 years it wasn't a problem, now it is. It might be for the same reason that, I mean, maybe through you to our acting fire chief, it could be just because the trucks have gotten bigger, which is why our bays may not be big enough to hold them. And so what used to be okay 60 years ago for those size fire trucks, today's fire trucks can't get through. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Plus the amount of cars that are on the roads today makes a big difference also, as opposed to 60 years ago.
So just to follow up then, for 60 years it wasn't an issue because of those two reasons. Now it is an issue, and I agree with our staff that if it's a safety issue and the liability issue that can come up, I always, if we're talking about some residents calling for something and some not, but it's not, a safety issue, I would agree to have a longer public hearing, but if this is a safety issue, you can't get a fire truck in case of a fire, then we have no option. We got to go ahead and support this.
Okay. I believe Councillor Neal moved a recommendation. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-72, tender award, Welland Canal Parkway Trail Repair, contract number 2017-190.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that a budget overrun of $10,715.84 be approved for the tender for the contract 2017-190 Welland Canal Trail Repair out of an encumbrance reserve fund, and that the tender for the contract 2017-190 Welland Canal Trail Repair be awarded to Circle P Paving, Inc. for an estimated amount of $32,150, HST excluded, as determined by the unit prices and quantities involved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreement. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore. Can I have a mover for the report? Councillor Ugolini? Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-73, tender award, culvert installation and ditch repair, contract number 2017-630.
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Dunsmore.
it's recommended that contract number 2017-630, culvert installation and ditch repair, various locations, be awarded to CRL Campbell Construction and Drainage Limited for an estimated amount of $110,323.85, HST excluded, as determined by the unit prices and quantities involved, and that the mayor and clerk do be authorized to execute the necessary agreement. So
Thank you,
concludes the
Mr.
report.
Dunsmore. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Longo? Speakers to the report. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the appropriate staff member. There's only one bid here. The job is for $110,000. Do we feel comfortable with this amount internally based on other work done in the past for the amount of ditch clearing and culvert replacement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that the estimate that we did internally, based on our previous year's contracts, gave us about the same amount. We actually had it about 120.
Okay.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-75, downtown parking strategy update.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that council award the contract as proposed by Precise Park Link for 1 year at an estimated cost of $22,900 plus HST to be funded from the parking revenue generated in the plan. So concludes the report.
Mover, can I get a mover? Councillor Ugolini? Speakers. Councillor Payon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I had a couple of questions. One is that if the parking strategy proposed putting one machine in Lot 4 and another one in Lot 2, how did it come about that we're putting two in Lot 4 and none in Lot 2? That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that came from a recommendation from Precise Park Link. These guys have been running parking lots for years. They suggested that we put one in the two major exits of the parking lot so that people don't have to walk back and forth to their car.
So I would take it from this then that if this pilot project goes well and then we expand it to Lot 2, then compared to what we thought we had to do before, it's going to double the cost of the machines. Because they would recommend 2 for the other one, right? So we went from 2 to 4. I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest it goes further than that, because then if we plan on putting these on Front Street, we're going to end up with 6 or 8 of these things.
Yeah, is there any, I mean, I realize that they recommended it, but I don't know. I mean, are they really not going to walk over? The parking lot is not that huge. I mean, to walk from one end to the other takes less than a minute. And if you're going to park your car there, you have to go get your ticket. I would be more comfortable if we actually put one in each, and that way the pilot project, because otherwise we're doing a pilot project and we're once again delaying having paid parking in Lot 2, which is where most of the students are parking all day long to take the bus. So we're not going to be, in other words, we're leaving Lot 2 as is until this pilot project is over. Is that correct?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. Lot 2, as you're identifying it, or where most of the students park.
Market Square.
Yeah, the Market Square is in behind what used to be the Home Hardware, right? And
oh, sorry.
right.
Yeah, sorry.
And so,
that's not where they park, but
yeah. Please understand, I've been doing this a lot, trying to get the parking lots confused in my head.
Yeah, because what confused me is that at one point, Lot 2 was called the Albert Street lot, and then in the cost analysis, it was called the towpath lot. So you're saying the Lot 4 is both the old parking lot by the fire station and Lot 2, sorry, the other way around.
The intent of the strategy,
Yes.
is the parking lot south of the fire hall on towpath
Right.
is going to be a permit parking only, meaning you have to buy a monthly permit pass.
Okay.
The new parking lot north of the fire hall is going to continue to be the 2-hour parking, but we're going to start using the machines to help the enforcement of that.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification. It's fine for now as a pilot project. Going forward, because of what you said, having to expand this, if it's a successful pilot project, I'm uncomfortable with that many machines, given the cost. But my second question was, when the total cost comes to $22,900, I noticed in the table that that's just for cash collection software. It doesn't seem to include the cost of the machines themselves.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor,
So for the pilot project, we don't have to pay for them, is that it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Councilor Ugolini?
Just reiterate from the parking committee, we did talk about 1 and 1. If they recommend 2, for the reasons stated, I don't have a problem with that, which means then we'd have 2 over in the other one. But those prices on those meters come in a lot cheaper than what we anticipated in our parking strategy meetings. Because you got them in here at, if we had to buy them, $7,500 each, which is significantly less than what we had planned. We also talked about, reasons why we're going to put meters on Front Street was the cost of the meters comparative to what revenue we were going to collect didn't make sense. That's why we have 2 hours free parking on Front Street. Because for us to implement a parking plan and put 8 meters on Front Street, we would never recoup the funds. So that's why that, at this point in time, wasn't a smart decision. But getting back now to where we are, my concern is the Market Square area for about a number of reasons. There's no white lines painted, so we need lines painted there so our parking enforcement know where the parking spots are. We had a contractor to come in and put transformers in that's never finished the job, and we're probably missing out on a little parking because they got pylons still, and they still haven't asphalted the area around the transformers, which should get done, I would hope, ASAP before the winter. And we as the city did a job on the south side of the Legion. We had to fix a water main, and we need to repave that trench and line those spots so that we can then have a monitoring of 2 hours, and then move forward. Plus, there's signs there that say 3 hours free parking, which need to come out because our strategy was we were going to be consistent across the whole downtown, and we were going to be 2 hours everywhere so that there be no mistake. So those signs need to be changed, the paving needs to be done, those lines need to be marked. So that's, if you can address that, and then I have one more issue.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the line painting and the asphalt, we've looked at that parking lot, and we've, similar to the parking lot south of the fire hall, we believe it's at a point now where it just needs to be repaved. like the whole thing needs to be repaved. So us painting it and then repaving it, we were thinking we could do it all at once next year as a budget item in 2018. As for the transformers and the signs will certainly be coming out if we go forward with this report, if we approve this report, because we're going to be starting to put in signs that talk about permit parking in that parking lot. So our intent would certainly be to refresh them when that happens.
So those need to be refreshed, but I still think we should at least cold patch them trenches, especially the one on the south side of Legion. Can't be left like that for the winter. It needs to be done because that's a mess over there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the operations department is aware of that, and they have been
And
trying
then
to
there's the permit spots, which are gonna be across from Reganelli's on the angle there, that we're missing out on money because the people parking there are people that live in those rental units. They're not, so that's something. But that's my next thing. As well as line painting, I just wanted to say that Front Street's in dire need of getting the lines painted as well. The lines are barely legible, but that would help. Permits, okay, so the permit part of this, when and how are we gonna implement that? That's my thing, because that's critical, because you come downtown in the morning, and I'm down there every morning early, and I go for coffee, and behind in the market square, there's people parking there overnight, not the whole parking lot, but there are spaces taken, and the south side of the fire hall is like ridiculous how many cars are there in the morning, and we're not generating any revenue on that, which definitely I think needs to be done ASAP. So if we could, how are we going to proceed with the permits? That's my question, to generate revenue.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, part of this proposal that we put in place is a software program for taking permit applications for those monthly permits, including payment and everything else for those parking spots. Once we start moving with this contractor, then we'll have a better idea shortly, but I would suspect before January 1st, we will certainly be collecting money and ticketing on people who don't have permits in that area.
Okay, thanks so much.
I have Councillor Whaling, Councillor Hanley, and Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to get clarification, we're going to do one, just on the old JC parking lot for the time being?
Yes.
Now, do we not have to go into bylaw with this? Because it is a change, with, like the costs and so on. I believe that should have to go into bylaw, should it not? Before it's implemented?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point in time, there's no need for the change because there's no operational change at this point.
But to start
when we start putting the machines in and we start adding the $1 for an hour after the 2, then we will have to make the modification.
So what timeline do you figure that'll be?
Again, before January 1st.
Okay. And then the other items, 1 to 6, they'll be shortcoming thereafter?
They'll all be kind of working together.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley and then Councillor Neal.
Thank you. In regards to the permit parking, if a person doesn't have a permit, we're going to fine them. And basically, they get to still park there for 24 hours. Have we ever considered a towing option? Because I'm considering bringing a motion forward. I'm serious about towing. And if you were here at the last council meeting, not one person sitting in that audience did not agree with me. They actually applauded when I mentioned about towing. So is the city going to consider towing? Because to me, giving a kid a ticket, because they're mostly all students, means nothing. Because I mentioned in the past, their parents are paying for it, so daddy doesn't lose a driver's license, not the kid. So I think we should look at a towing option also. Because if you're not going to pay the permit and you're just going to park there, I think you come by, you ain't got a permit, we hook them up and get them out, and we get someone in there that is paying for it. So just a consideration. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to city staff, has it been a consideration or no?
No, it has not. Through you, Mr. Mayor, all we've been doing at this point in time is implementing the strategy that was proposed to council through the Public Information Center.
Well, we'll give it some time to work its way, and we'll see if it works, and if not, then we'll be bringing a motion forward to maybe rectify the problem if it continues to exist.
Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just the north parking lot behind the old fire hall. There's another piece that we're thinking about making it a parking lot. Already 20, 25 cars are parking in there. Do we have any liability on them parking in a place that's not been designated as a parking spot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we always carry liability for anybody doing anything on our property. So, yes. Do we maintain it? Yes.
Are we looking at doing a parking lot in that area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're asking about asphalting it, yes, that's certainly on our 10-year forecast. We also, the parking strategy also talks about illumination and a few other things in there. So, yes, it's definitely there, but I believe we have it forecast for 2019.
Okay, and my last question right now is, are we looking at policing, once we start putting these things in place, are we looking at policing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't understand the term policing.
Commissioner, a bylaw officer,
Suspension.
I mean, after the 2 hours free, what happens then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the strategy is in place. Part of the reason for the strategy is to help make it more efficient for our bylaw officers to attend on a regular basis and be more effective with their time. And when that happens, I think you'll see a real significant change in the parking behavior, because based on the new parking lot, as Councillor Whalen referred to it, the JC parking lot, when we went out and started enforcing the 2-hour limit on it, it had a significant change in the amount of people. Now, I would suggest almost any time we're down there, there's 15, 20 spots easy in that parking lot that are empty.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah, I just want
Wadia,
sorry.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add to it that to your question is that once we lay this strategy out, we are going to enforce it. And someone who is parking after 2 hours will be ticketed. So certainly that will be a revenue source as well, which we have not taken into consideration in our revenue stream. Certainly the only revenue stream that we are considering here is through the sale of the permits. And you have been involved with this parking strategy in the meetings. The intent is that the revenue that we are going to generate through parking permits will be reinvested back in those parking lots in downtown. So it is going to go back to that. And I said there are few steps that we have taken, the signage, changing the signage throughout the downtown to make it 2 hours free parking, so there is no ambiguity. At this point in time, you have 2 hours, 3 hours, so just to be consistent, so that's number one. Number two, there are certain lots that has been designated for permit parking. So there, people who will have the permit, they have to come to us to buy that permit. It will be tagged to a license plate, so that for us to make sure that to keep account of who has paid after the first month and all those things. So that will be done. And if there are defaulters, they will be ticketed as well. And again, what Councillor Handley mentioned, that let's start with that process first, see how it is rolled out, and then if we are not able to enforce it properly, if we have to take more stringent action, certainly we can investigate those things as well. But so if you see that the whole parking strategy, we're just trying to put it in more systematic manner. Parking machine for longer duration parking, so you can take the ticket for 2 hours is free. Subsequent to that, you have to pay. On-street parking is 2 hours free for the customers. And that is what we are trying to invest in the software packages to strengthen our bylaw guys so that they can enforce it properly. At this point in time, they do it in a very rudimentary fashion. So we just want to make sure that the amount of effort and that is enhanced. And also we can generate parking revenue, and it is done in more orderly fashion as well. So that's just I want to bring it to everybody's attention that the strategy has been approved by council a couple of meetings back. So what now we are trying to do is trying to roll it out in a more systematic manner. Thank you.
Councillor Ugolini.
I just wanted to add one point to that, and that was regarding the parking lot, the old works yard, the stone parking lot. We did discuss that if we get a real large response and we need more permit parking, and we can drive enough permit parking that we could get that accelerate that job, get that job done, and debenture it, because we're going to be collecting money to pay the debenture. So that parking lot can get fast-tracked depending on how these permit sales go. And I got a feeling that we're gonna require that space, but time will tell.
Go ahead, Mr. Delwadia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other thing that we have heard through our parking meetings is the illumination aspect of it, and that certainly will also move ahead once we start collecting some revenues on the parking. Thank you.
Councillor Whalen.
Thanks, Ted. Quick question to Sean. Back a couple years ago when we designated an overnight parking on Front Street, I don't know whether it was part of the bylaw or not, but the area between Claremont Sullivan and the south end, the dead end, it's not posted. No, whether there was an oversight about not posting it, whether that was inclusive in the bylaw, can we find out? Because it's really been taken for granted that, and kids just flog there every night. That they park there overnight. So with snow removal coming on, it'd be important to free that area up.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that it was included in, I believe all of Front Street is included in that, but I'll check. and
That's
we'll
great. So
modify
if it is the
bylaw.
case, if we put the signage up there to reflect it.
And we'll
it'd be
modify the
appreciated.
bylaw if it's not.
Thank you.
Okay, any other speakers? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-78, parking bylaw amendment for apron and front lawn parking. Oh, Mart, okay, Mr. Wild.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Committee recommends that report DES 2017-78 regarding amendments to parking bylaw 150-2012 be received for information purposes. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Longo. Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-79, accessibility improvements at Lock 7 Tourist Office / Museum. Update to funding information. Mr. Wild.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that the General Committee approve an additional city contribution of funding in the amount of $15,250 from the encumbrance reserve for the proposed accessibility improvement project at Lock 7 Tourist at 50 Chapel Street South. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Sharon.
I move the report.
Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-80, 8 Carlton Street South, Senior Center, boiler system contamination. Mr. Wild.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, General Committee recommends that a budget overrun in the amount of $10,300 plus HST be approved for the removal and disposal of contaminated glycol in the boiler system and flush the entire system and refill with glycol at 8 Carlton Street South, and that the works be awarded to Complete Comfort Niagara Incorporated, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreement. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. Mover for the report, Councillor Hanley. Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-81, extension to real estate services to dispose of surplus lands. Mr. Wild.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Committee recommends that the real estate services with Karen Blackley of Sutton Group Skyway Realty be provided the necessary real estate services to dispose of surplus municipal lands be executed until November 30th, 2018, and that the corresponding bylaw to authorize the extension of the real estate services contract with Karen Blackley of Sutton Group Skyway Realty Incorporated be forwarded to a special council meeting this evening for approval. That concludes the
Mr. Wild.
report.
Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Neal.
So moved.
Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're moving into the clerk's section, CC 2017-50. Canada 150, change of programming for 2 additional events. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of the report are that funding in the amount of $3,500 be approved for the participation in the 2017 Santa Claus Parade on November 25th, 2017, and that funding in the amount of $500 be approved for a volunteer recognition event. The date is to be determined. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councilor Whalen? You're speaking to the report also?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask what the 3,500 is for with the Santa Claus? It's about half of what we fund for the Santa Claus parade, so can we be brought up today on that?
I think Councilor Ugalino wants to. You can go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that number was put there as a maximum. We may use less. We want to, we got a flatbed truck, and we're going to do it up, and we want it to be the last big event for the Canada 150, so there's going to be quite a bit of input put into the float as far as banners, flags. The senior choir is going to be on the float. There's going to be some other, designs. It's the last big hurrah for the. Well, it wasn't until the skating event, but this is going to be the last big showcase event.
Do you want me to add to a maximum of $3,500?
No, that's fine, just a.
Now, that amount, that was just put there so that we didn't want to have to come back
That's right.
and ask again.
Some great ideas. You might just get your registration because the parade is starting to fill up now, so make sure you got a spot.
They already know.
Perfect.
Okay, that's, are there any other speakers? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 2017-51, Letter of Municipal Significance for Buck-and-Fusil Funeral Home.
The recommendations of the report are that the Council of the City of Thorold hereby declares the Retroscripts Vision Board Workshop to be hosted by Buck-and-Fusil Funeral Home Incorporated on October 21st, 2017 at the Buck-and-Fusil Funeral Home in Thorold as an event of municipal significance for the purposes of Buck-and-Fusil Funeral Home, Inc. obtaining a liquor license from the AGCO, and that Buck-and-Fusil Funeral Home, Inc. shall be responsible for complying with all conditions imposed by the AGCO. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councilor Longo? Speakers to the report? Seeing none? Okay, go ahead, Councilor Longo.
No.
No. Okay. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 2017-52, Letter of Municipal Significance for Thorold Auto Parts and Recyclers.
The recommendations of the report are that the Council of the City of Thorold hereby declares the 35th year anniversary celebration hosted by Thorold Auto Parts and Recyclers on October 6, 2017 at 1108 Beaver Dams Road in Thorold as an event of municipal significance for the purposes of Thorold Auto Parts and Recyclers obtaining a liquor license from the AGCO, and that Thorold Auto Parts and Recyclers shall be responsible for complying with all conditions imposed by the AGCO. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councilor Ugolini. Speakers to the report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have nothing in the fire emergency, nothing in camera, so we'll go right into special counsel. Moved by Councilor Pion, seconded by Councilor Sharon, that we do now rise and enter into special counsel. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moved by Councilor Pion, seconded by Councilor Sharon, that the recommendations of the following reports be approved. DF 2017-23, DES 2017-70, 71, 72, 73, 75, 78, 79, 80. A lot of work here. And 81, CC 2017-50, 51, and 52. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Pio and seconded by Counselor Sharon, that leave be given to following, to introduce the following bylaw. Bylaw number 98-2017, bylaw number 99-2017, 100-2017, 101-2017, and that the same now be read a first time. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Pion, seconded by Counselor Sharon, that the bylaws just read a first time, be read a second and third time, and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Pion, seconded by Counselor Sharon, that this meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:46 p.m. Thank you, everybody.